T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, welcome everybody. Today we got a pretty good show for you, but first things first, let's give a big shout out to US Art, fighting for our rights, your rights, and my rights to own the reptiles, amphibians, all the exotics we love. They help mitigate any litigation that imposes and infringes on our right to own what we have the right to own and the animals that we love and take care of. And then we also have the Reptile Talks, May 16th, 17th, and 18th. That's really the 17th and 18th for the normal. Hold on one second, I'm trying to plug something in. But anyways, that's Reptile Talks last year. A lot of fun, really good place to network, talking to other reptile keepers and breeders. Just look at the event. There's going to be a list of well-known, well-versed herpetoculturists that will have some, insight on whatever species they work with. And last time Dr. Stahl was there, I was there. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, let's welcome Dave. First off, do we have any dinosaur stuff, Dave?
Dinosaur stuff? Yeah, I think we got some dinosaur.
Yeah, look at that background.
Yeah. Might be able to do better with that. I'm gonna have to go plain background.
Hey, William, how's it going?
Pretty good. You?
All right.
Holy
so, Dave,
shit.
What are you dressed as? A meth addict?
I'm spitting dinosaur. Not with the spitter.
Spitter, huh?
That's what I thought.
I thought it was a tribe guy or something from Papua New Guinea.
No, nothing like that.
Oh, that was the vibe I was getting.
Fades into the background. I can't do my green screen.
Can you get us some Bolin's pythons, Dave?
Well, they were at Tinley this past weekend.
I did see those.
How was Tinley for all you guys? Well, I guess
Good.
Junior's the only one who vended, huh?
Yeah, I vended as I usually do, and actually that's my longest running show that I've vended. Yeah, because even the Cleveland shows didn't start. Like I did Noah, but Noah doesn't exist anymore, so that's my longest running show. This October will be 22 years, believe it or not, because I started vending it when I was 16 with my dad, and I'll be 38, later this year. So yeah.
Ooh, damn, that's impressive.
Long time.
How long have you been doing Daytona for? I know you used to do Daytona.
I did. Well, the very first year I went to Daytona, I was 15 years old, and I was just there shopping for stuff with my dad. And then the following year we vended when I was 16, and I vended that show all the way up until I was 29. And so I vended that one for quite a while. I was going to return, but we'll see. One thing is you got to get your paperwork in for, Daytona about like 20 years in advance. You need to do like 8-10 years in advance.
Well, I've been hearing a lot of newer people at Daytona not, I guess, being told about a lot of that stuff. So a lot of them were told by people just come on down or something, like the vend or whatever, and they would come down, and then they ended up getting booted out of the show or something like that. And I heard Wayne was the one that told them to do it too. Is what I was told.
It's probably some miscommunication. The thing is, you need an import license, which is insane because normally when you're talking about importing and exporting, you're talking about international, not domestic transportation. But Florida, it's all about, there's some bureaucratic, like nonsensical levels of things they keep adding on, and the one's an import license. So they want you to have an import license, and then you have to have an actual license, I guess, to vend there, and you need to get this stuff in advance. So we can see you, by the way. You can be there. That's fine. All right, Dave. So you are the dinosaur that spit in Newman's eyes in the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Oh.
What's that dinosaur called? A frilled dragon? Is that Australian frilled lizard?
Yeah. That's probably what got everyone into frilled dragons. At least our generation.
I'd say.
I think so.
Dilophosaurus. So Brandon knows he's a Dilophosaurus.
Oh, nice.
So very good.
Contribution.
I'll be right back. I'm going to grab this. I got something, Dave.
You just walked. Oh, okay. I hope it's your dinosaur costume you're not wearing.
Oh, I didn't even know we had a dinosaur theme.
Well, we brought you in late. I've been encouraging.
So I didn't get the heads up, huh?
You didn't get the heads up.
I see how it is. All right.
Yeah, that's my fault. That's my fault. Is that a puppet?
I think
it's one of them things.
Okay, I'll count that. So
Brandon, what kind of dinosaur is this?
Looks like a Temu T-Rex.
A Temu Rex. I like that. It is like a Temu Rex.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know.
I don't know, Dave. You were giving me bird vibes more than dinosaur vibes. Wow.
It's called evolution, buddy. That's evolution.
Yeah. And I got this one, too. I don't even know why I have these, but I do got them.
Think we should have a conversation?
Yeah, probably.
Well, we were chit-chatting about Tinley.
We were.
How was Tinley, Dave?
Tinley was nice. Picked up some pyros from BC Balls.
Oh, I heard.
Got to see those Bolins when I was passing by.
You didn't want to pick up Bolins?
No, I don't have Bolins money. You got Bolins money?
No. We'll see how long Bolins will stay that price. If you keep breeding them, either you have buddies you giving them to, or you just have a way bigger facility than you need, because there's only so many Bolins you can hang on to. Because I personally don't know a whole lot of people out buying Bolins pythons, captive bred or wild caught.
I agree.
Unless they're being traded or given or worked for something. I know somebody who worked on someone's farm who bred Bolins pythons to help him around his farm or something like that, to work off some Bolins pythons or something. So that's about the only Bolins pythons I'm hearing about getting tossed around.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very expensive. And the thing is, too, it's funny because we talked about it briefly, Dave, and then MJ, like, it was, and Krista, we were doing that live from Tinley podcast. Yeah. And it was like, I was like, well, what was the secret? And it's so funny. They're like extra males. And I'm like, that's like the really secret to stimulate a lot of breeding for a lot of species. It's like, multiple males. It seems like that's the way for, like, and, if you look at green anacondas, the breeding balls in the wild, there's like 5-7 males trying to breed one female. Or even some species of colubrids are like that. Like, water snakes, I see multiple males. And if I have a hognose snake female that isn't really that receptive, or the male's really not that interested, I just introduce more males. A lot of times when you get 2-3 males on a female, then you're getting, faster locks and everything, and it makes sense. So I'm like, man, if that's the secret, for one, everybody's going to want multiple Bolins males. And then, like William was saying too, these things are like not small, and they need like, nice setup. So you can't have like 500 of them. You can't breed them like, like a blood or a ball python or a boa constrictor. And and then it's like, if there is some people that are able to get these like fertile clutches, like I think they got decent sized clutches. If people start routinely breeding them, I think a price where they might settle at for a while is maybe like $5,000. I think the 10 to 13,000 marks, a bit much.
Yeah, well, but there's only. I was gonna say, I don't think anybody's ever gonna have 500 Bolins. There's not many people that have 500 boas in the industry in their collection, and
that's a hyperbole.
Okay, well, I was just saying it seemed like a bit excessive.
There's a hyper. I mean, like like 20 or 30.
Yeah,
there's a hyperbole.
I don't know where the price would have to be. I think at $5,000, you have a lot more people willing to take a chance on it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think $5,000's a more like palatable investment range. I feel like a lot of people, like, it's like psychological numbers. New beginner or new people in it, it's like $1,000. Oh wow, $1,000. That's like that's $1,000. And then from $1,000, if you are willing to spend $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 to $3,000 doesn't seem. But then when you get to $5,000, I even see it with my hognose snakes. $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 hognose, very easy to sell. Once you get over like $2,000, $3,000, a little tougher. Once you get up to $5,000, that's like a big investment, value animal, and there's more select people. Once you get up to $10,000, you have even fewer people. And, you know, it's like the Bolins is like, I was looking at it, I was like, man, it would be cool to own them. And I used to, when I go to the Japan expos, there'd always be a few there. And there would be like somebody with like a 6 or 8 footer. There'd always be like a couple, and people would hold it and everything. So I asked the guy there, I was like, oh man, I've seen people like when I used to go to the Japan expo, they'd have like big, you know, Bolins, like smaller adults. And they're always handling them and stuff. I know they are kind of a little like, you know, more, you know, active snake. And I was like, they seem relatively nice though. And the guy's like, no. He goes, mine will bite me every time. I was like, oh, really? I was like, oh, I thought these things are nice. So I was like, okay, so, I mean, I guess if you work with, he goes, well, I don't really hold them. And so it's like how it is like a lot of species though. If you handle them a lot, then they're a lot more used to you. They're calmer. They're a lot more indoctrinated to your, you know, you yourself and your activity and your, you know, just working with them. But I thought that was interesting because I'm like, oh, these are kind of a flighty snake. They are very pretty, but they get big. So I could see limited interest for multiple reasons, but they are cool.
The limited interest, I just don't see that because they're not limited in interest right now. Like everybody obsesses over a Bolins. A lot of people work with different species, obsess over them. Even if it's just somebody who wants to keep one just to have one, I think that customer base is actually out more broad than you're letting on once it hits the right price point. Probably.
I think a lot of that. Oh, go ahead, Will.
I think when you start getting in that $5,000 though, at least me knowing that miscellaneous Python community, if they're spending $5,000, they want to breed it. I don't know too many miscellaneous Python keepers that are looking to spend that. I'm sure there's a select few, but I think most people look at that price and they go, well, I'd like to breed that at some point. And I think that's what scares a lot of people off too, because they hear how difficult Bolins are. And they're just like, I don't know if I want to take that kind of chance on that kind of price tag for something. They don't have enough confidence to want to breed compared to like a Hognose or a ball python or something that's a little more, easier to breed, you know, and people have a better understanding of it.
Well, and it's not a beginner snake because it's not beginner money. And like I said, I think if there was more availability, people would, again, buy more. And even, I mean, for the past 4 or 5 years of the hobby, I feel like they've always been around $10,000. And I think everyone that's been on the market has sold the last 5 years.
Yeah, they seem to. I think, William, what do you think? Do you think people are just hanging on to these things and just selling very few? Because the other thing is, too, if you need, like, multiple males to breed females and you want to get into Bolins, you're like, all right, I need 2 females. Then what do you need, like 3 males, 4 males? So you're looking at, like, investing, like, $50,000.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I'm wondering if some of these people are just doing the good old, like, ball python thing where if they can't sell it, they're just trading them to, like, get other weird pythons or other weird boas, you know. I've seen that a few times. Like, I'll trade your pair of Bolins for a pair of, like, basins or something like that, or Moluccans that are fairly expensive, too. So I think some people might be using them as, like, trade routes to get other species, you know, or build their collection. As far as
if I had Bolins to trade, I would want $25,000 or $30,000 a piece in trade because I just don't think there's anything in the industry that compares to a Bolins when it comes to, like.
I don't know. You ever seen a Moluccan? Do you know what a Moluccan is, Dave?
I'm going to Google Moluccan. As soon as I see it, I'm like, oh, yeah, a Moluccan.
It's a purple and gold snake.
Are they available here?
Yeah, but they're just as rare.
Okay. I've never.
Is it it's a python?
Yeah, Moluccan python.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of that, actually.
Judy said I hadn't heard of it either.
I've brought it up so many times.
Oh, they look like a really gold scrub python.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I was going to say it's a scrub-looking animal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, but I would still say like a Bolins is going to outweigh that. The funny thing about a Bolins, though, is they are really cool. They have the really nice black, the nice white, like kind of like yellowy bars, but it's really that iridescence. The crazy thing is, if you want a hypermelanistic snake that's insanely iridescent and really pretty, what about an IMG boa? An IMG boa, the thing is, I think a lot of the thing with the Bolins python is they are kind of a coveted snake. They're very rare. They're very expensive, and you don't see them often. So this rarity aspect, too, comes into play. Oh, yeah. I mean, look at, like, I've seen snakes that used to be really rare and sought after, but once there's a bunch of them around, people kind of realize, well, we don't really like them that much.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the IMG comparison is actually really good. And, you know, here's my thing I'll say about IMG. IMG is on my table, whether there's motley in it or if it's just a basic or anearthristic, is still a $800 to like $1,200 to $1,400 animal, and it's been that way forever. Like IMGs have held very well. There's some higher end ones out there when you get to combos, but just that one that's going to be a true black iridescence, still a fan favorite, and most of them that I sell honestly go into the pet industry, not the breeding.
I could see that. I mean, they're one of my favorite snakes. I really like IMG. I'm trying to find an area to plug this in. Oh, here we go.
That's a fly hat you got on there, Junior. Is that a new one?
It's Morph Market. Yeah, we got it at Crystal. Where did we get this? Southeast Expo.
Shit, I got offered the old man version. I didn't get the cool skater one.
Yeah, I got the cool skater one.
Is that a flat brim?
Yeah, it's got a flat brim. I think it has a sticker on it too. Actually, yeah, it does. Still have that on there.
By the way, Dave, I need that Ben Rennick hat.
I got that Ben Rennick hat for you, buddy.
I forgot to swing by. I didn't know Chad was the one that had him.
I got one for Junior too. I went to go look for Junior at the end of the show and I missed him.
Yeah, I had somebody that was buying Hognose. This is how good Hognose sales were. Somebody was like, I'm going to buy these. And I was like, all right. And we discussed the price. And they took too long, so I just packed up and left.
Wow.
Well, I knew they were going to take. I was like, I'm not. This happened last time. So I'm not waiting a half an hour and holding everybody else up. And then they're still buying them. If they want to buy them, they can message me. I'm leaving. I don't care if they have money now.
Man, I think it was the last Pomona I did. I kept the table operating for another hour and a half after the show was over, and I made more money that last hour and a half than I made the first 2 days in sales.
Those are fun, actually. When you don't have like anywhere like, or if you don't have to be out there right away. I do like hanging out at some of those shows if it means that I'm not gonna get back at like 7 a.m. and almost dying because I'm falling asleep behind a wheel. Yeah, those are good shows. That happened at the Southeast Expo because like I don't see Dave sometimes that much, or like even though we're running into each other, we don't hang out. Dave's like, let's go out to eat. And we went to that K-pop place. And Dave and I both were leaving, and our drives were, I think, equally the same. He was driving back to Missouri from northern Georgia, Atlanta, and I was driving back to northern Ohio, and I had a 10.5-hour drive. We did the show all day. We drove around in go-karts for about an hour after the show closed and hung out. We went out to eat. By the time we got on the road, it was like 9 p.m., and I was like, I'm just driving straight back. But it was horrible.
Mm-hmm. No, but that K-pop place was awesome. Really love that. And honestly, there's a Korean barbecue near my house I want to check out, but I don't think it's going to be anything compared to that place.
The Red Ginger place you recommended was pretty good, too.
Was that him or me?
You.
Okay. Thank Yelp. I think I just Googled it.
Oh, Yelp. Okay. Well, either way, it was good.
Yeah. Got anything going on in your collection right now, William? Anything breeding, hatching? William, stop reading the words when I'm talking to you.
What'd you say? I didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. You don't read the bottom. That's Junior's job. Your job is to listen to me talk.
All right.
Holy
fuck.
Fuck.
Beautiful. I'll make
I'll read it, yeah.
What do you got going on right now? You got something breeding that's really cool this year for the first time? You got some eggs on the ground yet? What do you got going on over there?
No eggs. Starting to get ovulations, though. I don't like jinxing myself, because I'll tell you what's going on, and then either I get slug outs or nothing ends up happening. So, but I got a lot of stuff breeding, a lot of different species, a lot of different, and then obviously a ton of ball pythons too.
No eggs on the ground yet, though?
No, just starting to get ovulations.
Okay.
You?
Well, you
did. You had a handful of ball pythons, didn't you?
I got a full incubator. Yeah, I got a full incubator of ball pythons, and I'm in like 4 good litters of boas, 3 bad litters of boas, and I think we have 2 Womel clutches on the ground.
Oh, you stud!
Yeah,
damn, you had that much going on. How long ago was it when I was over there?
I'm not really sure. We started breeding a little early this year, knowing that we were going to have the move coming, so we definitely missed out on some females because of the move. And we bred the skinks literally the day we moved. We'll see what happens, man. I'm a little weary because I've had a couple off years with the skinks, but it felt good this year. So I think I'm going to actually have some success.
How many skinks are you going for this year?
Well, I bred 40, but that's going to look real fucking pathetic when I get 10 litters.
When you breed 40 skinks, though, Dave, and let's say you have a bad season, did you get 40 locks? Did you observe 40 locks?
Yeah, it's all observing. Yeah, I had 40 females that had at least 1 lock, and I had multiple females. Maybe half of them we got a second lock. I went into, I was in the middle of still moving while I was still breeding skinks, and I had a slow day of breeding skinks. Sometimes you hit a wall, no one's interested, everyone's just angry. Because I had one bad day, I honestly just stopped. And usually I push through about a week or two after a bad day. But like I said, having 40 females locked feels good. They all look like really good locks. I think one of my males went through 10 females. Another one of my males went through like 9 females. So 2 of my males almost did all my breeding this year.
What? How many males?
2 males took down, I think, 18 females.
Jesus Christ.
So you're doing the opposite of the Bowen's Python people.
Well,
he's
yes,
doing the ball python route.
Yeah, he's doing the ball python person route, spacing out the young male and getting locked as a mate. I remember hearing those stories like when I was like in my teens, like Ian and other people had like a super pastel male and they got to breed like 10 or 12 females. And at that time that was like insane. Like, people were saying
you would hear about like a 40-month-old. I would hear something like a 40-month-old ball python breeding or something like that. I go, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. Now they have like right. Like basically I've heard of like 2-year-old females that were like, pumped up. And the funny thing is like that it does work for some ball pythons because for the majority of pythons, you'd be like ruining your animals. Imagine trying to breed like any other python like that.
I was listening to Daniel Natouche was talking about this. He said this on a few occasions too, but he said scrub python. He's documented in scrub pythons, green tree pythons, reticulated pythons. We've seen those in captivity do that too. Burmese pythons in captivity, obviously ball pythons, and I think rock pythons and most of the big stuff. Is I've heard 18 months old. People breeding females and wild animals breeding at 18 months old.
And it working. And them getting some all clutch.
Well, now, they get a clutch, but I don't know. I think when those animals breed, even in the wild, who knows how long they're living because, most of the time they're probably being knocked off at, 4 or 5 or 6 years old or something like that. So they're probably not living all that long.
So, I always talk about smaller boas, raise them slower. I had a round of boas that are going to breeding this year. They're all around like 6 or 7 years old, all females, never been bred before. Most of them still like 6 to 8 pounds at the most. 2 of those females gave me litters at 20 babies this year so far. And I got one more female this week that's going that honestly, she's probably 8 pounds. It looks like she's going to give me 20 plus again.
All right, looks like I'm wrong. It looks like there's a bunch of people breeding pythons at a very young age. Ryan Young said he bred NWLPs at 2.
Northern
white-lip python. Okay.
I have a 2-year-old female I made, and I'm looking at it going like, God damn, I don't think there's no way she could pump out some eggs at the size she is now. But I grew them up slow. I'm just lazy with that kind of stuff because it's not like they're some crazy new thing or anything. So I just raise them up just real gradually. So I'm not in a rush with them.
You had some at the Southeast Expo. I seen you had some nice captive born northern white lips.
Thinking about I got a funny story. So I'm horrible about resexing animals when I get them. Like usually I'm just like, fuck it. It is what it is. And I just go with the flow. And I got 3 females from Ben who got them from Chris from Mystic Reptiles. And Ben got a clutch of them from him, raised them up. He sold a few passed away, and then he was down to 3 of them. And here he goes, do you want these? Because I don't really want to deal with these anymore. And I said, sure, why not? So, and he didn't have anything labeled, so he goes, we're going to have to resex all these. So he puts them in, they're like, at this point, they're probably 3-4 years old or something. So he has them in a bag, or half of their body in a bag to pop them. And they all popped female. And never questioned it. Because I was like, and I just didn't care at the time. So I was looking for a male and eventually got some males to breed to those females at some point. Well, I think I start trying to breed them in 2020. So, I mean, the females were like 8 or 9 years old or something at the time. And first year, nothing. Second year, got 1 female to breed. And then 3 or 4 years later, I couldn't get these other 2 females to breed. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, what's going on with these things? I go, the other female breeds perfectly fine, like clockwork, if I breed her, if I don't give her the year off. So, and these other 2 females are like 6.5 foot long and horrible animals. So they're not something you just can get out and without having to really fight with. So one night I go, all right, I'm gonna probe one of them while I feed them. So I plopped a live rat in there and then hurried up and probed it. And that probe went like fucking that deep. I go, Jesus Christ. I go, I've been raising these 2 males, breeding, and I should have figured, because I remember a couple occasions that they would wrap each other. And I remember years ago, Ryan Young used to tell it, because there used to be this big stigma around white-lipped pythons that would kill each other. But Ryan made the assumption that, it's probably just people mis-sexed animals that have 2 males together. And I should have assumed whenever I saw them wrap each other, they never did it a lot, but there's been a few times where they have hit and wrapped each other. And I should have assumed that something was up with that. But me just being me, I just go, fuck it. And then now I'm like, I have these 2 giant males and then I still have my other 2 previous males. And I'm like, good Lord. So I got like a 4.2 right now. So if anyone out there wants some big white-lipped males, I have a couple of them that I'm willing to sell.
All right. What I love about that story, the sneaky way you probe the animal while it was eating. It reminds me of when a male. Yeah, have you ever seen a male chicken like drop a pebble of food, and when the hen comes in, he like rapes her?
Oh, you saying I'm raping stuff now?
Well, I'm just saying, man. It's a little.
No, it's a good idea. No, it's a good idea. Great idea. My one violent blood python, the male, he's pretty nippy, and I could usually get him picked up without getting bit, but sometimes he'd be in a corner, and he's like 3 foot long, so he's kind of like a little bigger. So a lot of times I would feed him, and then when he grabbed the rat coil, then I'd pick him up and move him and clean his enclosure and put him in his new clean enclosure and switch him like that. So that's a good idea. I like what you did there with the probing.
There's just no way. They're so fucking mean. I mean, Jesus Christ.
And they're pretty wily too, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. And these are F1s too, so they're like extra pissy. I don't know what it is about a lot of F1 pythons and stuff, but a lot of them can just be some of the nastiest animals for some. It's like you breed the fear of humans right out of them that first generation. So, but I got F2s and they're still horrible. So I was like, I don't think these things are ever meant to be mellowed out.
Do you have any southern white lips?
Oh yeah, the high end ones. Yeah, I got a pair. I actually got them from Lisa.
Oh, okay.
A couple years ago, she breeds a couple. She has a few of them. Looking to get another pair at some point. I actually like the southerns. They're really, really cool.
They're pretty cool.
Is that a Gageo question or is that a probing question? Because I don't really probe.
What kind of gel do you use, Dave? It could be for the feathers, like them asking about your hair, or maybe your beard. It could be for the probing. It could be, who knows what this is questions directed at.
Well, if it's this, it's hairspray, of course, and a little bit of paint. I don't know if the paint's going to come out, though.
Oh, jeez.
All right, so somebody asked if this is a Hognose podcast. I mean, I am a Hognose breeder, so that will come up in topic.
Well, whenever I saw the title of the show, it said the history of Hognoses. I go, Dave, what do you set me up for? Are you setting me up for failure again? Because I don't know anything about the history of it.
I don't write the titles. You know what the funny thing is?
You made me nervous. That's all.
99% of the time, I don't even read the title until after the episode, and then I'm all like, we didn't talk about any of that stuff.
Oh, thank goodness.
Well,
I was a little nervous.
I was trying to get Kevin Rhodes on, but it was like we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and it was just like not in the cards for him this week. And he's been pretty busy, so we're going to do that months later. And Kevin's one of those few guys that's been into Hognose. Actually, he's been into Hognose a little longer than me, which is there's not many people. Like there's I know of like John Lynch, and I need to talk to him. There's Kevin Rhodes. And there's only like a couple other people that have been into Hognose like before I got into them. If you fast forward and look at the majority of Hognose people now, most of them been in the community or hobby for 10 years or less. It's mostly very young people, like, not young in age, but young to the community. Do you see that a lot in the Python community too? Like there's not many like people from 20 and 30 years ago. I mean, I wasn't quite 30 years ago, but like very late 90s, early 2000s, I was definitely owning Hognose and then, reading about them and tinkering around and going to reptile shows.
I with miscellaneous Python stuff, I notice it's still mostly old school guys. I mean, you do get newer people coming in, but the old school Python guys, well, that's primarily what it seems like it is. I don't know. It's weird when I look at ball python, because mainly the younger crowd of people are a lot of the ball python community, and they don't seem to like to fiddle around with too many other different pythons. They either like jumping into some other animal that has a lot of mutations or is smaller or insert whatever reason. Because, I mean, even blood pythons, I don't see a whole lot of ball python people jumping over the blood, or at least not in, like, huge numbers like you would assume, because I just assume if you like ball pythons, you would like pythons. So you would think they would like other pythons, but it doesn't seem to be the case for a lot of at least ball python people. So I guess way back around, it's just you see new people, but it's very few and far in between where you see new people getting into miscellaneous pythons, at least from what I see.
My opinion, it's kind of mean, but ball python people seeing ball pythons that are a soft species usually move into colubrids and other softer species. They don't typically go harder like a blood python.
Hang on a second.
Tear them up. I know that. I know for you were a hardcore ball python guy that went that way, but
you said they're soft. One of my worst bites I ever got was from a ball python last weekend. I popped open the tub and this female grabbed me on the lip. I haven't been grabbed on the lip by a goddamn snake, anything other than a ball python now. That was fucking ridiculous. I got tongued by a ball python essentially.
Hey, that's location, it was the worst. You have to let another species bite you on the lip now to see if it's the worst.
Ooh, I don't know. I couldn't imagine.
Try an Amazon basins or a really agitated like 5 foot blood.
I think the scrub python would come pretty close. Like, I mean, as far as accuracy, if I wasn't paying attention, there's sometimes those scrubs at night that'll come shooting straight out of the tub right towards the face.
Did you watch Forrest Gump and then clean your snakes and take a lip bite?
Yeah, a little bit, Dave.
Yeah. Anybody get the reference?
A little bit. It's been a while since I've watched Forrest Gump, so
I don't know what happened. What happened to Forrest's lip? I don't know. He did like 80,000 things happen to the guy.
You guys don't remember Bubba?
I remember Bubba. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that lip? No, Jesus. You guys need to watch Forrest Gump. That movie's a fucking classic.
I have to rewatch it.
I gotta rewatch it.
I'm not gonna Google this for you. You should just know.
I haven't watched it in like 15 years. It is a good movie. I feel like
it's probably been longer for me.
The old school Python people that are there into more of these niche species, I feel like they're like kind of like the old school Colubrid people that are into locales and like gray bands and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say so for the most part. I mean, the only species that might come close to the ball pythons would probably be like the Rita community. I think the Rita community is kind of close, but they're not. It's not the exact same. Those are still somewhat older guys I see in the hobby because there's only so many people that can get in the big retics and stuff and be able to handle that kind of stuff. That
community's a mess.
All right. You want to answer this one?
These plains Hognose snakes are so cute. I love to get into keeping and breeding the snake species, but are they profitable or at least a break-even type of species? Well, Hognose are very popular, and there's a lot of morphs in them. They're relatively inexpensive to keep and feed, and they are very, they're fairly easy to breed. So, yeah, I mean, normally I don't look at it like that. I say get into a species just because you like it. But Hognose, if I was to say a species of snake that's really easy to get a return on your money and investment, Hognose are definitely in the top tier of that. Their popularity is very large, and they're very liquid as far as importation and exportation, unlike CITES animals.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed. I've noticed the one species of python I had noticed a lot of ball pythons that have been piquing ball pythons' interest was Antaresia. I've been getting more people asking about like spotted pythons, Stimson's pythons, and stuff like that. So that's the one other python that I've noticed that's picked up a bit of popularity, at least among ball python people, anyways. Newer ball python people.
Did you happen to go by Vin's table when you were at the show?
Yeah, a little bit. I saw some of the T-positive stuff. They had quite a few, actually, didn't they? Or at least Kenny did.
Oh, cool.
I saw them advertised all week on Facebook. Like, you got a real hard-on for children's right now. But, like, it's cool seeing that there's actually
some...
Someone's going to...
Oh, wow.
Somebody clip that. Somebody clip that. Chat, clip that. What time do we have? Chat, clip that.
Oh, God. All right, continue.
We're at 9:35.
Just keep going. Roll with it. You already said it.
I'm out, buddy. I've got 5 already. I think I want to get a lot more.
Oh, is that the age? What? No, I'm just kidding. What? Just come on, Dave.
Man.
Oh. I felt like it was going to be something good, too. And it had to get ruined. But yeah, I noticed Antaresia have been picking a little bit, not nothing crazy, but I've noticed more ball python people are interested in them or showing interest.
Yeah, well, if there was more morphs, I really like the marbled ones. The marbled ones look really good.
Marbles are tight.
That kind of leads me to a question. What do you guys know? Because I only just recently heard about them, but is it Reptile Alliance over in the UK? Kind of like a U.S. art thing. What's up with them?
I just followed them today. I have to look more into it. But
I just heard about them too.
Yeah,
not that long ago.
It's like a week ago, somebody's talking about it, and I seen a post and so then today yesterday I followed them, and then they're like a U.S. art book for the UK because I guess the UK is facing some legislation that is infringing on their ability to own animals. I don't know what's going on over there exactly.
Okay. All right.
That was didn't MJ bring that up in one of his intros of his podcast?
I think so. Justin, I heard. Yeah, Justin did. Justin did like a little.
Yeah, that's who it was. Is Justin I seen do it?
Yeah.
Here's a question: do you think for either of you guys there was a species that if you bought it early on enough in your career that your collection will look completely different right now?
Maybe, but I don't know. I was going towards other species. And this leads into this one. How'd you fall in love with hognose species out of other snakes? Very simple. I just seen them. As soon as I seen them, I was like, that's the coolest snake. So, obviously if I didn't see a hog, but the, snake right away. And I don't know, eventually you're going to see them though. It'd be very hard to go into reptiles and, be vending at these shows and be breeding and not see a hognose snake. But I don't know, Dave, you see me, like I got real heavy into geckos and it's still went full circle. I still went right back, of course, to hognose snakes. But, it was a matter of me building up my collection. I, of course, had hognose the entire time. I actually I've had hognose longer than I've had leopard geckos. But, I don't know, man. They're just by far my favorite snake. And so, but for me, it's like a little different. I mean, I have a lot of interest in other species, but my interest in hognose is just so much higher. I really do like beaded lizards, though.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good point about your collection because, you guys went a really long way with leopard geckos. So, like, even if you would have stuck with that, you were already kind of, like, really mainstream, known in the public for what you guys are doing. So, doing not a complete switch because you're still in the gecko game, but,
It's weird. It's weird that because when I got into the hobby, I was into leopard geckos like 15 years ago. Actually, longer than that even. And Junior was one of the guys I followed at that time. So, looking at him now, I still in my head think of him as a leopard gecko guy because that's how I came into the hobby. I would follow you and then one other guy who was a leopard gecko guy who took blue backgrounds.
Oh, that's Steve Sykes. That's
Sykes.
Geckos, etc. Yeah.
Okay. Then it was him and you. I would see your guys' website all the time. All the time. It was ridiculous. I'd spend days at a time looking at both of your guys' stuff. And then like Garrett Meyer too. Garrett. He was another one when he was heavy in them.
Yeah, for a while there, when my dad and I were doing a lot of geckos, I'd always do the website updates, and for about a 5-year period, we updated the website constantly. I was always updating it, and I remember some other gecko breeders would mention it to me, like the 2 people that updated their websites their most with projects and availability was me and Steve.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say you guys had probably by far the largest availability list. I mean, you would scroll for days just looking at all your guys' leopard geckos you guys would have on that.
Can we talk about the numbers that you told me you guys used to do?
Yeah, the geckos. I mean, we'd produce a few thousand a year. The most we ever produced in a year was like, man, it was like around 4,500. It may have been close to 5,000. And that was at the point where my dad was like, this is too much. I agreed. It was like too much. And, I was definitely younger, of course. I was like right around like 20, 21, 22. And, I thought it was cool to like, grow more and more and more. And, with geckos, as far as how prolific they are, and then how when you have a lot of them, they are a lot of them end up being more like pet animals, and they're lower end pet animals. So then you got to think of the quality of like, life that you're selling all of these like, geckos, like, across the board to like who knows who, and you're doing a lot of wholesale. So yeah, now I would never want to even produce that many, and I don't even think it's good to produce that many.
Well, I think you're just speaking on the time that you came up in. I mean, Dave, I remember Ben Rennick used to talk about he wanted to be what did Robin Markland, I think, and them used to do those. They used to go to big shows, and they would do like these talks, and they were talking about like the different tiers of the industry, and there was like tier 1, 2, and 3 or something. And I think tier 1 was your big producers like Gourmet Rodent and all them. And I remember Ben used to strive to want to do that. So I remember years ago, everyone wanted to do the bar check thing, the gigantic facility. So I remember back in the day, I think that was a lot of people's draw, is they wanted just these absurdly large collections,
Yeah, I mean I was the same exact way, even when I saw Brian's collection for the first time. And I mean, that thing was at its max. So no, I think there was always kind of a dream to get big. I don't really know what it was about that.
I don't know either. Maybe that just the way Brian. I think it's a lot of what Justin's doing today. Is a lot of people were just drawn to that. They saw that and they go, "Well, I want that." I think it was kind of the same thing.
That's another thing. That's a good point. You talk about the influence that Brian had on maybe making people think a big collection was good, and now you have Justin that has more of a boutique collection, and that carries on to other species when people see that. Like even me with my blue tongue skinks, I'm like, I don't want a lot of these anymore. I want to refine and only have the best possible now.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's where most people I think that's the best, direction to strive towards. Because and another like real big breeders like Pete Call, and you see his place is like 8,000 square feet. It's all these boas and ball pythons and the bells, and it's all this cool stuff. And you have Brian, and and now it makes a lot more sense to instead of just like trying to produce a bunch and then blow them all out, sell them more to customers where you're actually interacting with the customer. You're not doing mass wholesaling, and you're producing cool morphs and projects, and it's just not a rat race to basically, produce animals almost as if they're like feeders to an extent, because when you're producing like the most, like normally like we were producing like only a couple thousand geckos a year, which is like still like on a very, very like, pretty high end. But there's breeders that Gourmet Rodent was supposedly pumping out like 20,000 like corn snakes and like 20,000 geckos. And that's just like to hatch them out and just to like feed them a couple times, if that, and then to sell them to shops or retailers or anything. And that's like, and try to make a few dollars on each animal. It's actually not a good look for the community for the most part.
But it's never in the spotlight. Most people in the community, unless you've been around for a while or even know what the fuck's going on, even know who Gourmet is or any of the other big companies, it's off the beaten path. People just don't know. But you're bringing up the corn snake thing. I think I remember we were talking. They went as low as like $6 or $8 at some points.
Like maybe $4, man. Yeah, like $4. Yeah, $4. You heard of because they produced like I forget how many tens of thousands of corns, but it was like way too many. And you get mixed. That would have been I'm trying to think 14 years ago, roughly. I'm trying to think exactly. Yeah, it would have been like 14, maybe 17 years ago, somewhere in that range.
I think a lot of stuff suffered. I remember you used to be able to get. I remember Sabu pythons used to be like $75 or $100. Maclocks used to be like 50 or 100. Scrub pythons, you could get almost all of them for like $100 to $200. Bolin's pythons were depending on who you knew, could be anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 at one point.
$1,200 I had one offered to me, I think, in 2003 or 2004.
Bolins?
Yeah, Bolins.
Ryan and Nick used to say they used to get lists of them for like $750 or $800. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Rather than adults or not, I don't know. They might be shitty wild caught. Well, all of them are wild caught, but shitty wild adults or something. So.
Yeah, they were all imports and because I remember in farm raised, but a lot of times they say farm raised and it was just like a young juvenile they caught out in the wild. But when I'd go to the Japan Expo, there'd always be some available, and I went there from the time I was 23 into to then to 27 or 28, and anyway, they would have babies there for like 15 or I think maybe $2,000, but I was told if you wanted some, we could get them for you for $1,500 each, and so that was 14 years ago.
Right. I remember when a lot of that stuff was not dirt cheap, but much more reasonable than it is now. I remember dwarf burns used to be like $300 to $400 for individuals, and I remember a lot of the super dwarf stuff. I remember people used to give that shit away when you used to get imports in because nobody wanted it at the time. And I was like, God, I remember when things like this used to be given away for free. When then 10 years later, after the ban happened, they got jacked up to just unrealistic numbers.
Happened with a lot of stuff, pretty much everything. Tortoises used to be really cheap. My dad would tell me in the 90s, early 90s, tortoises that would be shipped in, radiated tortoises were $25 each, and spider tortoises were $50 or something back then, or $100, or I don't know, they may have been cheaper. And then it's happened with everything, ringed pythons when I was around 18, 20 years old, $150 each, and monkey tail skinks. They used to be I remember when I was first started going into shows, they were still $60 each, $80 each, and they were imports. Then they stopped exporting them, and immediately within a couple of years they're up to $400 to $600.
I think the most impressive one though is the Chinese water dragon. You used to be able to get them for what, $5-6?
Yeah.
Now they're endangered or something. I don't know if they're ESA or I don't know what they got placed.
That would be insane if they were ESA. A Chinese water dragon going ESA would be
well, no, they may not be ESA but you can't get them imported anymore. And now I heard their prices shot up through the roof again. Now they're more than the Australian water dragons, from what I'm told.
That's cool. I like hearing of that stuff though, because a lot of these things they stopped the mass exportation because most of those were just dying.
Yeah, they were just people, or they would just get sold and then die shortly after or something.
Because that should be a lizard that is a little more skillful to keep, or you need more maintenance, needs a larger enclosure. That should actually be a few $100 animal at least.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then even white lip pythons. I remember when I was 15 years old, so this was 55 years ago. There's this guy that had these white lip pythons and his 55-gallon long enclosure, and they were mean and they were adults. And I remember he was trying to sell them to Ian at the end of the show, and Ian, I just seen him because I was I could vaguely hear him. He was just shaking his head. He goes, man, I'll give you $20 each for those fucking things, or $15 each. And I think the guy actually sold them to him because he didn't want to go home with them.
Right.
But that was a lot of stuff. Even hognose snakes, man, when they were first. I remember when I went to Daytona, and the first year I was buying stuff, I bought some from some guy. He had some baby hognose for $40 each on his table. And they may not have been eating. I think he said they were. Eventually, I remember I bought them. I remember some I had a really hard time with, but I eventually got them all eating. But he had 7 of them, and they were $40 each. I remember I asked him, I was well, how much? And it's funny too, because I was I was 15, and not one of these people that I was buying from ever asked if I, for adult supervision, even if it was a bigger breeder. They just sell the stuff to me. I did have a vendor badge though, that I got from actually the Bells gave it to me. And I was looking at these hognose snakes, and I was like, how much did you do if I bought 2? And he was, well, if you bought them all, some of you for $25 each. And I wasn't even thinking of it. So I was okay, I'll buy them all. And I bought there was 5, 6, or 7 of them. And, because I remember even Norm Dan would tell me that you get wild caught, or captive hatched baby hognose for $20 each from Richard Evans.
Right. Well, I mean, Dave knows the blue-tongued skinks were like that too at one point, right? They were not junk animals, but fairly reasonable animals. And then Barczyk talked about them, and they skyrocketed for a while.
Yeah, I think it was like Junior, back when you were still doing the Hamburg show, there was a guy that was a couple rows away from me, or maybe down the same row about midway, and I want to say he had them out for like $85 to $120 for a few times that I was out there, and then I kind of started building up from there, and I think at its peak, in all honesty, I think you got like $450 to $650 a piece on a normal.
What kind?
Northerns, mainly Northerns. That was really all that was available. Okay. There's been some Eastern stuff that kind of came in when the craze started.
All right.
You know what the one thing is, Dave? You know how like you can't export northern blue tongues anymore because they're Australian species? Yeah. Shouldn't there be like a big boost in wanting to like selectively line breed Eringias because they're exempt and you can import and export those ones regularly?
Well, there are some Eringia mutations, and they're being worked on right now in the United States, and that stuff will probably still get exported to other countries. But and there has been the discussion about how much Eringia blood can you put into, let's say, a northern blue tongue through mutations or whatever else before you can export that animal, because there is some crisscrossing going on right now in the hobby.
Well, I think those are not supposed to be, because I'm sure they have it in their rules that Fish and Wildlife wrote up. Hybrids probably aren't exempt. They probably aren't allowed to be exported if they're hybridized. That's what they'll say at least, but then it's like, well, if it's a high percent Eringia and people are basically considering it an Eringia. But all that banning that was all around a time when there was a lot of the blue tongue morphs. So they were just trying to
stop that.
Stop that. Even though it was all captive born animals.
No, 100%.
That's why I was asking about that the UK the responsible keeping group or whatever. I was curious if maybe, I don't know, it seemed like they were, U.S. people were supporting them, so I thought maybe they were collaborating with USARK. I didn't know if something was happening behind the scenes that we just didn't know about or something, so I thought maybe, I don't know, I was holding out hope that maybe there could have been something done for a lot of the Australian stuff that we seem to be having trouble with over here. So that's what I was kind of holding out hope for. I was kind of wondering if you guys knew more about that stuff or about them.
I haven't dived into that one. Actually, that'd be a good guest, Dave, for either you or me, as somebody that is from the UK that could explain to us the responsible reptile keeping. And here's the thing: it's got a good name, responsible reptile keeping. So
Well, why don't we just?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, why don't we just have on people that are running that organization?
Oh, that's what I said. That's what
is that?
Said. Yeah.
You said that. I thought, my bad. Maybe I wasn't listening. Right.
He's high. He doesn't know.
I thought you said a European breeder that understood what was going on.
Somebody from the UK that's part of the organization.
Okay, I thought you just meant a breeder that understood the organization. I misunderstood.
Well, somebody that's from the organization that understood. Yeah, that of course understands it.
That hopefully understands the organization.
Right. I don't know. I'm just holding out hope. Maybe there could be more collaborations or them working together with the U.S. and everything. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Because doesn't Canada have one too or something? Or they used to? I don't know if they still do. They called it something. I don't remember what it was called.
Where do you think the benefits of working together would be?
I don't know. To help maybe get rid of some of those bullshit laws, like can't export Australian captive bred stuff. I don't know. That seems a little shitty. But that's just me. That's just me being a selfish Australian keeper in the U.S.
That's a fish and wildlife issue. So that's something that Fish and Wildlife has to be like addressed. I know Steve Sykes had some weird issues with exporting with Fish and Wildlife, and he does. Yeah, he does his own exports, and one of the inspectors seen he had Angramanu. They're a leopard gecko. Eublepharis angramanu, and they were aware that those things were never really allowed to be shipped out of Syria. And it's like, man, isn't Syria like mostly exploded and like desert terrain anyway? And anyhow, he wasn't allowed to export them. Long story short, and so then he was basically trying to find a way around it.
Well, it sounds like some of these places or some places are willing, like the ESA with the whole McCrae or the Blue Tree Monitor. I didn't realize some of those groups are willing to work with captivity or work with captive keepers, because they're saying they're having like a virtual meeting about it or something to talk about how
cool.
many generations there are in the U.S. And I go, why can't we do this with more species? There's a ton of other ESA animals that aren't technically endangered anymore, but once they're on the ESA, they're virtually impossible to get back off of it, even if they're not endangered anymore, because of some whatever reason they keep them on there, and it's like they never decide to take them off or something. So I don't know.
I think it's to me it seems almost like laziness. It's like, when they have a law passed and put into place, and then to undo it, they just have a law that negates that one.
Yeah, right.
Instead of just abolishing it. I don't know. That's what it seems like they do. But yeah, it's like, why did something become ESA and then, it just is not, it's like later they just undo it.
Right,
and this person asked about wholesale for hognose snakes. What is the typical wholesale discount among the community? For one, a lot of the wholesale hognose are imported from a mass producer, and they're retailed from a reptile shop. So I would be cautious of getting those just because of diseases. And each individual person is going to have a different wholesale pricing. So reach out to larger breeders and see if they have any available. I wholesale sometimes, but not a lot. And my wholesale always varies.
Yeah, we were talking about wholesale pricing during COVID. People selling wholesale were starting to sell at 50 cents on the dollar to 70 cents on the dollar, where pre-COVID wholesalers were at like 20 to 30 cents on the dollar. So there was a big spike, but that has come back down since then for a lot of species.
It's still up pretty good. I'd say here's the thing. The reptile, actually, some people ask me if this Tinley was worse or better than the previous March. So I compare them to the year prior. So it's the same, month and everything. And I was like, yeah, this March wasn't as good. And then I went back home, and PayPal has its metrics. And I looked at my other stuff. I'm like, oh, actually, I made more this March Tinley than I did the previous March Tinley.
Nice. I was talking to Chris and Adeline earlier today, and they said that they think that was one of the busiest crowds they've seen at that show since around COVID.
It was good. I mean, I will say it was a good show. So
I've never seen them direct traffic out of the Tinley parking lot to go somewhere else to go park. That was pretty wild. I've never seen it that packed there.
So did you get towed at Culver Burgers?
No, I made it. We're all good. I was terrified, man. I really thought I was going to get towed. I was like, the manager was out in the parking lot telling people to get out of there.
That was at Culver Burger?
Yeah, because I was like, I don't, because they have people telling you where to go that don't speak English, so I couldn't tell where he was talking about. He was like, go to whatever restaurant it was. And I'm like, I don't even know where that is. I go, I'm just going to park at Culver's. I go, I'm just going to save us both the trouble. So, but yeah.
Nice.
Well, you could have bought like a Culver Burger and then told them that, hey, I'm in that truck right there. I just bought this Culver Burger, and I just got an emergency call. I'll be right back.
Well, I thought about getting one or getting some whenever I left, so I walked out with something. But Scott sent me home with pulled pork, and I was like, well, now I don't feel like eating anything else. So otherwise, I was going to get something, but nope. Scott sent me home with something.
Or get a bunch of Culver wrappers and ball them up and put them on the hood. Right. So when they come out, and they're about to get this fucking truck, and there's a bunch of Culver wrappers in there. All right, they can stay.
Right.
Hey, Junior, do you find as many overseas buyers coming to Tinley to do bulk buying from you like it used to be?
No.
Is that because on the internet at this point? Nobody needs to click anymore?
I guess so. I think a lot of it has to do with one of them is arrested and gone. And then there was another one that went with him, and he was arrested and he's gone. So that's great. That was a bunch of money that was coming to the United States that was getting taxed on aggressively, and now we're not going to get that. So thank you, government, for not. So now you screwed everybody, including yourself, government. You're welcome. And anyway, but yeah, there would be guys that come from Hong Kong and stuff, and I think it's mostly because they have the pre-range sales, and basically it's not as aggressive. You know what I mean? Before, I think it was pretty advantageous to buy stuff directly and to ship it back. Now there's not as limited supply on these crested morphs or hognose morphs like there was before. You can like sit back at home and call and like, you know, see if you have lily white axanthics and like super conda sunburst hognose and, you know, what else ever you're looking for. And, you know, people are going to have it versus, you know, flying all the way over here and spending like $7,000 on a trip and all that time when it's not really going to be as beneficial as it was before, especially when there was all this competition to buy this stuff. So, yeah, I have noticed like some of them just aren't coming to the show as much, you know, and then other ones were arrested. So that's where they went.
So what do you, Dave?
He'll be back soon. I mean,
We'll be back soon.
7 years, 6 years?
Maybe.
So I guess this is a question for both of you. Were the ones where, you know, the guys you guys are talking about, were they buying primarily pet animals? Was that, or were they intentionally trying to breed or going to breed them? Or were they just buying animals for like pet shops or something like that?
Pet shops, but mainly, yeah, high end, like a mix of high end stuff to resell to other breeders. So they'd have breeders that were, you know, interested in getting stuff from the United States and like, you know, higher end, nicer morphs. And so they would, basically bid for these guys to go over here and buy the stuff. And it wasn't like a bid, like, you know, an auction bid, but they'd tell them like, hey, we have this amount of money. And then, you know, they'd negotiate and be like, hey, do you want to pay this much? And then that person would make like, you know, a commission on these sales and everything. So, you know, I'd say is mostly breeders that they were buying for.
All right. Well, maybe I guess it just seemed like, because I just noticed Justin, some big Canadian breeders, ball python guys. I see shipping a lot of stuff over to like Indonesia, China, or not China, Japan, and all them. So I didn't know if maybe they were shifting over to become more breeders and stuff. Because I noticed in Japan, anyways, people who keep a lot of the miscellaneous pythons generally just keep them as pets. They don't seem to be that interested in breeding. So I didn't know if maybe they were just pet keepers or they were actual breeders or not over there.
I think a little bit of both, but mostly breeders. You know, a lot of these guys are getting into like Rhacodactylus or hognose snakes. They're trying to breed. I would say ball python, you know, breeding and certain like, you know, is maybe a little more limited there, especially when I'd go over to Japan. I'd actually went to some ball python breeders places over there, and they're limited on space. Right. So you're not going to really see ball python facilities over there. And probably alike with Korea, although Korea seems to actually be going a little harder with this stuff. And seems like Korea's economy might be, as far as when it comes to the reptiles, is a little larger than Japan. Japan was always known to be pretty big. But I want to say Korea's got to be bigger now, because all those people that were spending like 20 and 30 grand on crested gecko morphs, they were all in Hong Kong, China, and Korea. You know, and
Indonesia.
Indonesia, I think there's a pretty good ball python community there or market, but Indonesia is like a relatively like kind of like not the most financially you know, prosperous country. And because I've done exports to Indonesia, and they're always smaller orders. You know, like a $10,000 or $20,000 order over there is like very large. So there might be like, you know, a big market there or bigger market for ball pythons. But I find it unlikely that there's multiple ball python people over there spending like 50 or 100 grand. I'd imagine they're buying smaller orders like 10, 20, 30 grand, maybe 40 grand tops. And if they are the most popular species there, you know, maybe, you know, there's a few people placing orders like that, but I don't think it's a lot. Same with like the Philippines. You know, there's not a lot of people importing, you know, large shipments over there. I'd say the largest customer base that's not in North America, it's not in the Americas, I would say is going to be Korea, China, Hong Kong, a little bit of Japan. Japan's, you know, they actually buy a lot of ball pythons, but their economy's, you know, a little tough.
Well, what about the European market?
Oh, it's like whatever that thing is. That thing is like, it's, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that thing. It's...
I mean, there's got to be some size to it. I mean, they got in before a lot of these other countries you were talking about when it came to breeding reptiles.
Europe used to be, I remember when I was selling a lot of leopard geckos with my dad, it was like, they were like our biggest customer base, but leopard geckos were just taking off. There weren't a lot of leopard gecko morphs there. and the euro was extremely strong. Like the euro, like they had so much more buying power because the United States dollar was weak in comparison. Now the United States dollar and the euro is like almost on par with strength. So they're not getting that great of an exchange rate when they're buying. There's not like as big of an incentive. And they also have a lot of the morphs already. So like even for hognose sales, like I have some hognose sales there, but it's like minute. It's very small. Like I probably have, I'd say I sell slightly more to Europe every year than I do to Canada when it comes to hognose snakes. So.
What about Mexico? You sell much in Mexico?
No, I don't even know if it's, I heard there's legal ways to transport there, but I'm never actually directly selling to Mexico unless somebody's buying something from me and then not telling me it goes to Mexico, and it goes to Mexico. Okay. But if somebody's ever like, hey, you got to ship these to Mexico or I'm going to take these to Mexico, I'm like, I'm not interested in working with you. I got to ask my broker about actually I should ask somebody else that's maybe a little more informed, but I don't know about the exact legality of it. I mean, I always tell people like I can export to you just as long as it's legal to import. So contact like your customs brokers and then see if they can import the animals. If they can, I'll ship them to you. But as far as I know, like Mexico's like a weird one, but I know that Miguel guy's been going down there, Dave. We talked about it a little bit. Yeah.
That's what I've been wondering. Seems like he's been moving quite a bit of stuff down there. And
so that's got to be legal then. It's legal. I don't know how it works though.
Shit, I see probably the most common species I see breeders working with are like retics down there. Or at least all the ones that pop up on my thing seem to be retic breeders in Mexico.
Well, here's a question where
it seems like it.
Maybe we can't import into Mexico. Can Europe import into Mexico? Like, could they be getting stuff from the Asian companies? Or
maybe Europe could export to Mexico. I mean, it's really about it's not about all the legality of us like exporting there. It's really about if they're allowed to import. Because we're allowed to export reptiles from the United States, of course, especially a non-CITES. It's fairly simple if you have an import-export license. But the country just has to be legal to accept them. So if let's say I exported hognose to Mexico and Mexico wasn't allowed to, or the guy's not allowed to, they're illegal there, I don't think I would actually see any negative repercussions because it's legal for me to ship them. It's just illegal for Mexico to import them. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. I mean, I definitely don't want any animals being confiscated, so I wouldn't do it unless I'm like, fully sure that they can legally accept them. But if let's say I exported something like, I'll tell you a good one. So I imported some hognose from Switzerland. Pain in the ass. This is the Swiss chocolate shit. And I got one of the hardest ass fish and wildlife officers that looked at this stuff. And this guy called me up, and he had airlines, Lufthansa, on the other line. So he had Lufthansa on the other line, so a representative of them. And Lufthansa's over there in Germany. So he had this German person, and then me on the line. And this guy's trying to berate us for Lufthansa missing something with this guy's information when he exported to me because he didn't put me as co-signee. I'm like, well, if I'm not as co-signee, I was like, how the fuck do you know if even for me? It's like my name is on there. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but the guy was trying to say that I was legally responsible. I'm like, I'm importing it. I was like, I don't know what this fucking person over there is writing on a box. How can I be responsible for somebody in Switzerland writing shit on a fucking box, dude? I was like, this is impossible. I was like, I know you're wrong. And so anyway, he threatened to give me a ticket. Nothing ended up happening. And then I complained to my broker. So it was kind of like high school. We all kept trying to tell on each other. And then that guy I heard got put on desk duty for a while and everything. So he got in trouble with the principal. But yeah, it was ridiculous. That was really dumb. I wish I knew exactly how, I don't even know what the hell the guy wanted. I'm like, how am I responsible for somebody in fucking Switzerland writing something on a box? I'm like, he's like, well, you should have told him to do that. I was like, I don't know what he's going to do. I was like, am I going to be preemptively think about, hey, this guy may or may not do this. This guy exports all the time. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
What'd he do? What did he forget to do?
He said that I wasn't on the box as the co-signee. Maybe I was on an invoice. Okay. And no, but there's Dave Ventura. Ventura actually retired. Ventura was actually a couple. It was actually a husband and wife, and they were both fish and wildlife inspectors, which they have absolutely the best last name to be wildlife inspectors. Their last name was Ventura. And they were always okay with all my stuff. All my stuff was always okay. This was some young new guy that wanted to make it sound like I was doing something illegal that wasn't even like had anything to do with me other than I was importing them. It was really dumb.
So, Junior, you used to do a lot more international shows. You ever gonna travel with animals like that again?
Yeah, maybe if I stop getting sick. This guy was talking about you looking like Ace Ventura because there really was two. There actually was two fish and wildlife inspectors out of LAX that they had the last name Ventura, and so I thought maybe he was talking about them. Never mind.
I had that one episode with MJ where I talked out of my butt for about 30 seconds until he told me to stop.
That'd be hard. How long would you have kept it up for?
I would have kept going until he told me to stop. I could have done it for 2 hours. I could have went 2 hours. Yeah.
That would have been very tiring.
Just a little wrist workout. I'll be fine.
Horrible.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I'm hardly even talking.
Yeah, I always take Dave serious. Look at that look.
You probably should. You really should.
Yeah. He'll kick my ass if I don't.
So, anybody lay eyes on those pie day geckos at the show?
No, I was hoping someone would post pictures of them. I didn't.
Me too, man.
I haven't got to see.
I think they were calling them like paradox though. I seen they had these like light splotching on them. I heard they weren't like genetic though.
But they still had a pretty high dollar on it, right?
They did. Somebody showed me a picture, and I just heard from them. They're kind of like, take on them and what their interaction with the person. Asking questions. It sounded like they were $10K for the Paradox Day geckos.
Okay. Now, I don't know for sure, but I did hear a rumor that they might have sold.
Well, somebody did buy that one Chimera ball python for $25,000, and it's probably really worth about $500 or like $700. So, I mean, I wouldn't be ultra surprised. And I've seen somebody bought a two-headed hognose for $50,000, and then it died like 8 months later or 6 months later. I've seen other 20 and 30 grand two-headed hognose. People bought them, and then they're dead within a year.
I remember for the longest time, people were spending a bunch of money on like calico retics and stuff like that. So I remember, those. And I remember Ben years ago, for whatever reason, one year he was producing a shitload of paradox animals. He wasn't asking no $20,000 for them, but he would charge a little bit more for them. He'd sell all the paradox animals he had, but he'd have he probably had like 20 or 30 paradox animals of all different looks.
That's cool.
Yeah, people like those funky looks.
Yeah. No, I think he had certain customers that always said, hit me up if you ever make anything like that. And I think there was a few guys that just started collecting that kind of stuff from him.
Yeah.
Some of those rare, unique looks, people don't even care if it's genetic. They just want a really unique animal. Because there is people that will pay a lot for high-end, expensive pets. And, some of them are influencers. A two-headed hognose for 20 or 30 grand. It's like, you just want that because it's unique and cool, obviously. And, it's crazy. Brent has that one. It's a two-headed hognose, but it's very awkwardly shaped. Its head is it can't crawl really well.
Oh, geez.
Yes, but you can't. Beggars can't be choosers when it comes to making a two-headed snake. You take what you get.
Yeah, I had two-headed hognose this past season, but they both died in the egg.
Interesting. You saved them though, right?
Yeah, they're in my freezer.
Okay. You gonna put them in a little jar?
Yeah, I gotta sell them to somebody that will actually see the value in them. I mean, I think they'd be okay to have in a jar. It's just not my thing. I like live hognose. The dead ones just be too much.
I got a question. Do you guys know anyone who's good at reptile taxidermy? I got a black-headed python in the freezer right now. I want to get its head stuffed and its skull articulated.
That's cool. I do like the articulated skeletons and everything. I do like those. Because I like the anatomy. I shouldn't say that. A preserved hognose. I don't really. I know I'm not going to look at it much. A skeleton, I think, is more fascinating because you're seeing the actual.
I would say I'd like to have the articulated head and the stuffed head side by side, just to have a comparison. I just thought. It'd be cool to have them both.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good. I like that take.
So every species I have a python, once they get old or kick the bucket or whatever, I'd like to get their skull articulated and the head stuffed. But the problem is, I don't know how many good taxidermists out there do reptile stuff.
I think that's a tough one.
Yeah, I see some that just hit and miss.
They're like
really,
all
really
fucked
rough.
up. Yeah, you ever see that? You ever see that stuffed lion for like King Louis III or something? And it's like
googly eyes.
Yeah, it looks like an Arabian sand boa and a lion mixed together because his eyes are almost on the top of its head.
Right. Just some of the Burmese python ones I see, I'm like, God, those don't really look that good. I don't know, someone who seems to actually give a shit what the snake looks like. I don't know. At least the ones I've seen.
You know what you need to do? You need to find somebody who does that diaphonization for those hognose. That'll look really cool with the two different heads.
What?
Diaphonization, where they peel the skin off it, they take a lot of the muscle tissue out, and then they put it in these chemicals, and it makes
it makes like blue and red.
Yeah, no, that'd be kind of cool for that.
That'd be, the problem is the two-headed hognose are, they're into like they're hatchlings that are like, and they're small ones. They're like
people do that with pinky mice.
I know, but still, I guess you just got to look at it closely. Then, I know what you mean. It would be neat, Dave. That would be a good one.
What are you doing, Junior?
Responding to a customer because, I love doing these podcasts and everything, but I can't miss a customer. I can't not respond. This guy's trying to buy something. So this is part of it. Amy's like, how well do hognose sell? I'm in the middle of selling one right now while I'm talking. They sell when you talk. That's how people love hognose snakes, which is easy to care for. They're small. There's a lot of cool morphs. And really, it's their faces. That's like their faces and their whole anatomy is like really, really cool and pleasing to look at. And
so, do you have a percentage of how many of them are ball python keepers and how many of them are just new keepers?
There's a good mix. There's a good mix. The ball python keepers scared the shit out of me because those guys are like selling to like kamikaze pilots. Like they're like, we don't care, crashing prices. And then they're like, wow, a hognose snake. I made like $300. Like, that's a lot of fucking money. They're like, this shit's easy. And I'm like, oh God. Cause like some of these guys, like, they're coming from like, World War II and then going into like a suburban kind of like breeding environment essentially. And so it's like, it's a little, easy.
You think that's bad? Imagine species that don't have more, so they want to crank them out. And it's like, if you don't have a variance of looks, you just kind of flood that market immediately, and it just goes right down the shitter. Like,
yeah.
It gets rougher if you get into more of that weird species stuff, because it's easier to flood those kind of markets if you decide to make a shitload of them.
Yeah. You're right. I see what you mean. The hognose market, since it is so large and it's kind of sprawling because it goes into these, overseas markets, which it's pretty easy to sell and ship over there because you don't need, CITES license. The hognose, there's a lot of them out there, but still the, overall market is very good. And I'd say it's like not like ball pythons, but I would say the one similar thing is like, let's say if you're making a bunch of like combinations that people already have, and they're not really in demand. Yeah, they're going to be harder to sell, and you're going to be selling those more as pets. But if you're into the newer projects and you're making really good stuff, that still sells, it sells really well. And then there's also polygenics and, hognose, in the community, selectively line-bred traits, which is like kind of newer to ball python people.
Oh,
but I don't see, and so that's a little different to them, and they don't know how to crank that one out as much. And that one's more about, strong lineages and continuing with a project and not just like, jumping around. And there's also projects that you can capitalize on and improve for generations. So it's not something that's like one and done where it's like, oh, you bred this one and move on, it's just an additive gene. And now it's like, you got that gene and everything. And now the new gene, you can combine it with that. And then hognose too, they're a little more, there's some like tougher things about them when it comes to them versus ball pythons. Hognose, definitely have a little higher metabolism. You got to be feeding them, more during breeding season. The females can eat the eggs and everything. So there's like a few nuanced things that are, make hognose a little tougher in certain aspects.
Well, Dave, now the same question to you. What's the percentage of boas? We'll say boas and blue tongues. Were there ball python people getting into something different, or it's new people just getting one of those species? Do you keep track of that stuff, or do you not really care?
People switching species, like moving into different avenues?
No, just either new people that just decide to get those species or ball python people getting those species.
I mean, I see a little bit of both. I mean, I have a lot of people that come in the hobby when they start seeing the boa stuff, just completely commit to boa constrictors. But, you know, I always tell people with boa constrictors, you're going to have one bad year. Don't let it bring you down. But I'll be honest, that bad year is so bad for some people, they never come back from it.
Right,
I always encourage people to go the ball python route because I think it's easier. I think it's a unique market. I think it's a broad market. And, you know, just like you, man, that money can go in any other species. But like I said, I've got a lot of people in the bows over the years, and I hate to say it, I think at least half of them got out of the game after that bad year.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of species can have that, like, heartbreak. Like, I know Ben used to tell me, you know, people wanted retics until they get bit by their first big retic, and now they don't want retics anymore because of the bad bite or something.
That reminds me of that guy that was doing that Gila project, and it was like I think it was like a thesis. Like, he was pretty deep into it, and he was working with the Gilas for like 2 years, and the one bit him, and he was in the hospital. He's in critical care for like, I think, like a week. And when he got out and he finally recovered, he got rid of all the Gilas and ended the study, the whole thesis project, and everything all at once.
Oh God!
But the other thing is too, like, I would say, like, because you did ask the percentage, I'd say like for new customers, William, there are a few, but it's not massive. But I would say there's definitely more ball python people getting into hognose, and they definitely usually spend pretty good money. The one thing is, though, they have to be cautious of, and some of them are doing it right away, and the information is there. It's like whether it's if you come across it or if you want to listen to it. And the one problem is there's a lot of newer hognose keepers. And a lot of times when people will talk to these hognose keepers that have been keeping stuff for 5 or 10 years, and sometimes it's not the best advice.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But it comes down to quarantining. You know, if you quarantine and you do things well, that's good. And then Brandon asked, I just sold a Super Yeti, and then somebody's looking at buying a pair of hognose. That's like a Swiss Xanthic Toffee project. And then also, jumping around, check this out. I've been putting up some leopard geckos on auctions, man. These leopard gecko auctions are going like incredible. Believe it or not, William, you think the leopard gecko auctions have been going great?
Where at?
MORPH Market.
Yeah, good.
Really? Nice.
So the polygenetic stuff. So boa constrictors, a lot of our pastel lineages, that's all poly stuff. And honestly, you can jump right into bows and start working poly. It's not a very difficult thing. You know, there's a learning curve, but I wouldn't say it's like the Excel breeder kind of guy. It just depends on the species you're working with.
I honestly, man, I think if you get into any species outside of ball pythons, polygenetics usually plays at least a significant or a major role in those species. Like carpet pythons are the same way. Blood pythons are the same way. You know, Antaresia, a lot of those other species. You know, colubrids, obviously, too. King's corns and milks, a lot of polygenetic traits. Yeah. So
ball pythons are literally the only species that doesn't have anything poly in it.
Well,
they
do it passively.
They could. We just don't really know.
They just don't focus on that particular thing. They could, though.
Yeah, I had this conversation yesterday, but when you look at the variability of the 10,000 ball pythons that come in the country every year, how are you going to possibly line bred any of that stuff? Like, they're so variable, where some of these other species, like boa constrictors, same pattern, very traditional, has a classic look. You don't get like a million wild patterns in the bag, you know what I mean? You're building on that more wild type. It's easier.
Well, if you work on it, you can definitely do it. It just takes time. You can get striped looking ball pythons, orange looking ball. You just got to take the time to do it. And the problem is, why do that if you can just plug in your morph and plug and play type of deal? That's the only reason. And I'm sure there are people doing it. I've heard of rumor mills of certain people that are selectively breeding to make certain morphs look better. You know, they're working on the wild type animals to make the morphs look better. But those are probably people you'll never hear about because nobody cares. So,
well, the people do it. They do it like passively when they keep their like best pastel ball pythons, their best orange dream, their best enchies. And so like they're doing it.
That was probably more of a thing back in the day when you had a lot less genes, and that's all you really could do compared to now where you have so many genes. It's like why do that if I could just add all these other genes?
Right, and it's kind of hard to tell if my Orange Dream Leopard Pinstripe Pastel Pied is a nicer looking version of this other Pastel Leopard Orange Dream Pied. Yeah, then I get what you say. The funny thing is, though, William,
go ahead. Our promoter, RGI, if you run into one of those combos, give them a call, send them a shed buddy. They'll figure that all out for you.
Right.
There you go. Yeah, the shed testing is coming to Hognose too. Although it's supposed to be this year. I can't wait till it comes out just because it'll be finally out and see what morphs will be on the list first where they can genetically shed test for. But like William was saying, they're actually oh, good. Well, I was gonna say because you're right. There is a lot of polygene, or people selectively like blood pythons. Selectively line breeding, like the cherry bombs. Those are selectively line bred. I think it's a T-Paz, but it's selectively line bred to be the reddest, T-Paz. Right. Sumatran short tails, they're kind of locales. The black, the silver heads or the orange heads, and then what are the silver ones called?
There's chrome heads and black.
Yeah, chrome heads.
Southern Sumatran, and then the pumpkin heads are the northern. Which, by the way, congrats on that pumpkin head, that T-positive. I was hitting up Dennis about that stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a while ago. Well, Crystal has a female. She has all female blood pythons when I met her, and I'm like, why don't you get a male? And she's I just keeping them. And so I was like, well, you should just get a male. So I bought her a male, and that's the one thing though about the So I'm glad you told me that because I don't know much about the Sumatran short tails. I love them, but yeah, I always figured I was like, okay, it's a locale thing. You got the chrome heads, you got the ultra black ones, and you got the orange heads. Now, I like the caramels. I love the T-Paz, but I'd really like to see the T-Paz in a high black one. Where you have more of cocoa-y brown, rich colors. Because the orange heads are kind of the closest looking to like a Borneo. They don't look like a Borneo, but they're also they're lighter color.
They really do look very similar to them. You would almost, if you didn't know any better, you would have thought they were Borneos. Honestly, they're so similar looking.
Yeah, they got some similarities.
Dude, the only thing with the blood python thing is the whole retaining shit for a long. At least some of them, not all of them do it, but some of them will hold shit in for. I have this goldeneye genetic stripe goldeneye het T-positive, and dude, she'll hold in shit for 8 months. She held in so much shit. I had to help her unblock a giant urate that was clogging up her cloaca. And I was like, Jesus Christ, why'd you let you get so backed up to this point?
Did you give her a rat to distract her and then squeeze it out of her?
No, she was pretty gentle. She's pretty nice. Yeah, no, she was okay. She was okay. I was terrified. I had to do it on the floor because I was afraid she was going to do that whole death roll thing short tails and bloods will do sometimes. Like the Borneos I picked up not too long ago, they all do that squirming and death rolling shit. I thought I got away from this after I got captive bred ones. But nope, the captive bred ones do it too.
What about soaking them? Do you think like soaking these ones they're loaded up with shit? That's probably gonna help.
Probably would. I don't know. You know what? That would probably have been a better idea. I don't even know why that was the first thing I decided to do. I don't know. That's a good point. Now, next time I'll just ask Junior.
Yeah.
I didn't think of doing it, honestly.
My short tails, they shit every few months. Actually, I think that's a great thing because I only have to clean out the tub, roll every few months it's really blown up.
Yeah. I figured I thought if I fed, because I was feeding her during the breeding season because I was going to try to breed her, I figured, well, if I feed her a little heavier, maybe she'll pass a little more, pass a bowel movement more frequently. Nope, she would just hold it in. Then I was like, all right, I got to stop feeding her until she passes his urates and, feces and stuff. I mean, it was the size of a fucking baseball. I mean, it was impressive.
You should have put it in the freezer, then threw it at somebody at a reptile show, thawed it out, taken it to a reptile show, and whipped it at them.
It would have knocked someone out.
Who you, Danny Mendez?
Yeah. What? Oh, Danny Mendez does that? That guy's a psycho.
Go ahead.
You should get an X-ray on one of those backed up blood pythons.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just want to see all the
shit.
Just
to see all the shit build. I got a video I'll send you.
Is that the pied day gecko we've been talking about? Because anything else?
That's a leopard gecko.
Yeah, I know. I don't really care.
I was about to say, what are you talking about, Dave?
What is that? Dark Knight on a blue glove?
It's a Black Knight Super Snow on auction. And so, yeah, every time I do these like Morph Market auctions, man, for leopard geckos, you'll like this. So I was at the Tinley show. This is like off topic. This guy wanted this Black Knight on my table that's like $400. And I'm like, I told him, I was like, well, it's already pretty cheap. This thing's like mostly black. You know, you could do better. I was like, the lowest I could do is like maybe like I don't know, like 360. And I was like, this thing should actually be more. I was like, it's actually looking really nice. I should actually bump it up to like 500. The guy's like, Guy's like, I'll give you like $300 for it. I was like, I don't know. He goes, about 320. I was like, I'd probably take 320. He goes, then he starts asking me all these like questions that are irrelevant to it. And then he's like, you know what? Let me walk around. So I was looking at it. I'm like, man, this thing is like way too cheap. I'm glad this guy didn't buy it. So the guy asked me if I could hold it. And I told him like, well, before he left. And I was like, I can't. I was like, if somebody buys it, they buy it. And so I took it off the table. And I was like, I'm just going to put this on the auction because it's going to go for more. And so I was hoping the guy would come back around so I could tell him that it already sold. And then even though it technically didn't, it was on Morph Market auction. So it is selling to somebody. But anyway, he never came back around. That gecko went for $700.
Jesus. That happened to Dave with a boa, didn't it?
I think that's happened with a lot of species over the years, man.
I'm not, all the rest, I'm not selling them for a low price anymore. I have these Black Knights. I put them all on Morph Market. Tired of these people.
Have either of you guys looked into this Palm Street everybody's talking about?
I was curious about it. I was going to ask you guys the same thing.
I have an account. The account is kind of tough to make. They ask you about 70 questions, and it gets a little like tedious. I'm like, man, some of the questions are like insane. But I guess it's verifying you. And
so sure you're not on the dating app version of it?
Is there that version?
Maybe you're on the wrong Palm Street.
You look like you're dressed up as Palm Street. You look like the Palm from fucking Palm Street right now.
He does.
That's fair.
And so I am signed up and I have an account, but you have to schedule a live. And I asked Darian about it. Darian's like, we might introduce lives. I don't know if I want to do. I was like, I like lives. We're live right now. This is fun, right?
Well,
yeah, of course.
Okay. All right, so yeah, I go live on Instagram. So I was like, well, Palm Street sounds pretty good. So I haven't done one yet. You got to schedule them, which makes sense because then I heard there's some other good stuff about them. Like if there's a live going on, they end in succession. So once that live ends for, let's say, a crested gecko breeder, it automatically pushes all those people that are on that live into yours, and so they have the option to stay or leave. And it's a good compounding effect to like I guess. For people just to get like to see your stuff, to get some to get traffic and everything, and so people at least see that you have it.
Are they doing more species? Because I thought they were just doing crested geckos and ball pythons.
They're doing snakes now. Yeah, they've done snakes. Actually, I wanted to be one of the first people to do hognose. Somebody else has already beat me to it, even though I had an account before anybody else with hognose. I just didn't do anything. I've had a Palm Street account for like 5 or 6, actually since October Tinley. So since then, but I haven't done anything with it. I've had it for like 5 months. I would keep thinking about it, and Andrew gave me a good idea, but I was like, man, I was just too busy. He said I should do a live at the expo at Palm Street's booth and then auction some stuff out there. But you got to schedule them in advance. I think at least a day. So I could have done it Saturday, but it was just a little too much going on.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it's always this way with ball pythons, but I heard a couple of prices on some ball pythons on there, and we're talking $4,500 animals that really aren't that hard to sell that we're selling for $450.
Oh, geez.
And how much were they?
Well, I won't have to say the mutation, but it was mutation that roughly is worth about $4,500, and people are spending that right now, but one was thrown on Palm Street and went for under $500.
Well, that's the one thing. If I did Palm Street, which I plan on doing a few, I already imagine I was going to do hognose under $500. I didn't think this isn't going to be, especially I don't know what kind of crowd it has there. Obviously, the serious crowd for reptile people is going to be on Morph Market or just on social media or going to these shows. Palm Street is still new and is more of like a plant, and like terrarium and. Like gardening and just like, I guess like botany kind of like platform. And now it's getting into reptiles. But yeah, I feel like it's probably good for your $100, $200, and $300 one, like animals.
Yeah, I think pet stuff, I think it's maybe a little challenging to put an investment animal on there, but I also don't think you should be putting investment animals on the MORPH market auctions.
Yeah.
No, well, it depends on how you do it. Every time I've done investment animals on MORPH market, they usually do very well. I've only had like one that I wasn't happy with. A couple of them went for more than the listing price. I think it's got to be a little tactful with it. The one problem is I think the ball python community, people are, there's so many options and there's so many high-end animals out there. And if you just put it up on auction, and nobody's like really looking for that thing in particular at that time, it's obviously going to get swooped up pretty cheap.
Yeah. So the puzzle combos, right? That's what I heard about.
Yeah. That's what she said. Pastel hypo puzzle female went for about $500.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. I wish I knew about it. If I would have jumped on that in a heartbeat, in all honesty.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so so that's maybe it needs more marketing from the actual breeder putting their animals up, because if Emily at Snake Discovery went on there, I bet you she would kill it with every one of her auctions.
Oh yeah, she would probably bring like 5K people just to the platform if she started using it regularly.
100%. She's got the personality for it. No, if she was on there, I think. The thing is, too, is like, not everybody has the personality to auction off their animals. Not everybody has the online following. So not everyone is going to be successful selling their animals on that.
To me, I just think this whole situation just seems funny how these auctions seem to kind of wave in and out. Like first it was Facebook, then Reptile Ring. Now it's Palm Street and MORPH Market. And then I wonder if the market comes back up a little bit, they'll fade away, and then something else will come over and take its place again.
I mean, Reptile Ring faded away 7 years ago.
Well, that was when it was a boom, though.
A lot of these guys, though, weren't really changing or innovating. I feel like with MORPH Market, it's constantly like going to be trying to keep up. So this will probably be a platform that I think is going to be like probably the top and most relevant one. And then Palm Street's trying to get into that area, and I feel like MORPH Market is trying to get into like the plants and all that stuff too. I mean, MORPH Market has a lot of room to do things like, maybe make things more customizable and personal for the individual users, where you can almost make like a little kind of like website. I mean, you already kind of had that. You have your intro, but where you could also sell products and stuff, maybe. And then if they start like getting like, plant people in there, aquariums. And so now you have this bigger field of, markets and hobbyists that have some crossover, because, obviously the plant people and, let's say these bioactive keepers and breeders, there's a lot of crossover. I mean, how many shows did I go to as a kid? And, there'd be like one person maybe selling some plants, and they'd always do okay. Now you got people selling, like when I go out to these shows in the Pacific Northwest, 30% of the vendors are selling like pitcher plants and like, different terrarium and bioactive plants, or even stuff that, doesn't belong in a bioactive, but just stuff that you'd put in your window or in your little home garden or just decor. And, those people always do really well.
So I had heard from the Plant and Reptile Expo Troy with Best Dress and the Sloan Brothers put on. I hear that the plant vendors at those shows are saying, and these are the best shows they've ever done.
Yeah, I heard because they never had big shows. There's some of
there's big plant shows out there.
I don't know. That's what I was told. I was told there weren't that many big plant shows. So
hey, Dave, they had a succulent expo last year. I heard it sucked.
Ooh, that was a good one.
Do you have a little drum roll sound?
Yeah, a little ting. Yeah.
Where's my keychain?
Yeah. Well, you don't have hardly any clothes on, Dave.
Well, it's because I couldn't get a shirt on after doing this to my hair.
Oh, God. You poor
I didn't think about that part.
You get a tank top.
I guess I could have tank topped. I guess. Why, is this bothering you? You done with that?
No.
I didn't say it doesn't really. I don't even really notice because Dave has so much chest hair and a tattoo. It kind of feels like he's kind of covered up. And then his hairdo, he kind of does look tribal, so it kind of goes together.
Yeah.
Just always works.
Amy, I do have those both available. Actually, I only have some het pink pastels, but my girlfriend actually breeds pink pastels. She might have one available, and I do have Swiss chocolate, but those are expensive. Pink pastels aren't that expensive, but Swiss chocolate are. But I do have some hets for a pretty reasonable price.
Are people still putting a big focus in the pink pastel stuff? Like, is there legitimate breeders out there? Because I know we've had these conversations in the past.
Yeah, well, pink pastel, while it has like issues, it's like, I don't know, they're like far and few. Like, I haven't really seen any myself, and I've produced like a decent number. Hopefully I produce a good number again this year. We'll see. I'm still trying to sell babies from last season, and these seasons kind of like bleed into one another, especially as I'm kind of like getting eggs throughout the year. Like, I got eggs 2 months ago. I got eggs last month. I'm getting eggs this month. I'm pulling stuff out of cool down. I'm putting stuff into cool down. It's friggin' hectic as shit. And, I'd like to produce a decent bit of them, to get a little more, I don't know if you want to say experience or just like, I guess just experience with them. But I mean, as far as I've seen, I've already hatched out like 50 visuals, which isn't a lot. But the very first year I had some issues with ones that had this shedding disorder, but it affected normals too. It didn't affect just the PPAs. And then the following season, which was last year, actually I did more what would be considered inbred PPA stuff, and they were more closely related, and 100% of them did perfect. I haven't had one friggin' problem.
Junior, can we back this up a minute?
Sure.
Can we talk? Remember, I'm not a hognose guy. Can you elaborate on what the pink pastel is?
It's a recessive. Yeah, it's an albino mutation that was discovered in like West Texas. It's supposed to be near the New Mexico border, but anyway, doesn't really matter if it's found 50 miles this way, 100 miles this way. But it's not like it's a different type of albino. It's a different mutation. So if you breed it to regular albino, you get double hets. It's not allelic. So pink pastel looks pretty crazy. It looks like a double recessive. If you ever seen a coral hognose, which is an albino lavender, PPAs kind of look like that. Actually, my Arctic PPAs look a lot like my Arctic corals. But pink pastel albino, man, has been out for a long time. It was the second mutation discovered in hognose snakes from albino. Albino was discovered first, and then pink pastel albino was discovered a couple of years later, like in the late 90s. And they've been on the market for a long time. And the initial PPAs were kind of like inbred. And the inbred ones, even though they weren't overly inbred, just did very poorly. And then the PPA females had horrible fertility. And I'd hear people having them like drop dead, like in the early 2000s. And then actually Brian Barczyk got pos hats and bred mostly with using pos hats and made some visuals. And then Joe Schmidt out of like Reno, Nevada, he did the same thing. And they kind of had the first strong PPA lines. And their pink pastel albinos seem to do pretty good. And I got het pink pastel albinos when I was like 15, and then some later on, I ended up getting totally fucked, and none of them were actually het. And I was fucked over real fucking good. And so anyway, I got back into the project way later. And, I'd say over the years, just hearing from people, I'd see PPA females that just, people are like, oh, I could never get it to breed. And then around 2010, when Anaconda came out, some people bred like an Anaconda to a PPA female. And then there was two different people that had pink pastel albinos that laid viable, good clutches. And people were like, oh, and those are like the first clutches anybody heard of. I think before, because everybody's just trying to breed visual to visual. And that was not working for whatever reason. When you do visual to visual with like lavender, that's a different morph. Lavender, which is it's a recessive. But when you breed the visuals together, William, it's like almost impossible to get good fertility. It's crazy. But then if you take these lavender females and you breed them to something that has no lavender in it, let's just say like a sable, you a lot of times will get perfect clutches. It's really weird. But if it's too homozygous, for some reason, it causes some blockage for the egg follicles to get fertilized by another visual for whatever reason. It's something with their genetics that causes a high infertility rate. But I have bred lavender got fertiles. So I assume something like that's happening with PPA. And then you hear of Nero issues with PPA. When I was at Brian's when I was like 20, he had a PPA. And at that time, the pink pastels, I didn't even know that they were neurological. And, I knew about them from the time I was a little kid, because PPAs were like, they were just, coming out when I was getting into hoggers, when I got my first one as a pet. So, I heard of albinos, PPAs, and then like later on hypos. And so anyhow, Brian was like, yeah, I got like 20 PPAs. And this is like when I was 20, I'm jumping around a bit. And Brian's like, yeah, that one's got a little bit of a wobble. It lays on its side. I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, yeah, like the spider ball python. He goes, some of them are neurological. I'm like, what? And I never heard of that. So yeah, you had this PPA that would crawl on its side. And every now and then you still hear of ones like that. I know somebody that bred 2 PPAs together, or actually multiple ones. And they did. I was like, oh, you probably didn't get any good eggs. I was like, I bet you probably got 0. And they're like, no, we got good eggs. I'm like, oh, wait, you did? Really? And they're, yeah, but we didn't get many. And this was just a few years ago. And this breeder said they did like, I think it was like 2 or 3 PPA females to PPA males. And they got like 6, but they said they spun like spiders. So it's weird that the PPA to PPA is causing these like, issues that have poor fertility. And I don't think it was a coincidence that these PPAs that had really bad neurological issues came from 2 PPAs together. But I also know like Dan Eby, he bred some outcrossed double het sable PPAs to one another, condas, and he got a super conda PPA and it'd crawl on its side. So it seems like 1 in 50, 1 in 100 probably comes out with an issue. I've hatched out 50 of them. And I've had no issues. It seems like because they've been so outcrossed from the original lines, they seem pretty strong now, and it seems to have helped them a bit. But I still think every now and then you're going to get a Nero one. And so for a little while, and I'm still like, on the fence about it. Not really on the fence, but I still warn people. I'm like, I don't know if it's the best morph to produce a ton of, just because there are these, you are going to get one here and there that's going to have an issue, probably about guaranteed. But, you see this too with like lavenders. There's some issues with them every now and then, even though they're rare. And obviously albinos, since they lack melanin, protection in their eyes, they can have issues. So, like a lot of these mutations, they can have minor issues. So if it's a minor issue, it's like, where do we really draw the line? Is like, is this, ethical to breed or not ethical? And then PPA, with it being really not seeing any problems as of late, and they're very rare, it's like on the line of like, okay, it's okay to breed.
Right. So it sounded like it was like was it a heavily inbred situation is what you're saying? At least the original stock, I guess. A
little bit, but I talked to Richard Evans about it, and I think a lot of it was also this, William, and I think Dave and you will understand this one, and William, you'll probably understand. I think you'll this one will, and it's kind of more of like just an observational thing I've seen, and going back then, I think you'll agree. A lot of people because the Hognose collections were smaller, and you'd probably see those other animals too. They'd buy let's say I'm going to buy an albino Hognose or 2 het albinos or an albino and a het. Usually they'd buy them from the same breeder, and that breeder had like 1 or 2 pairs. They'd buy them, and they'd be from the same clutch, and they'd raise theirs up and breed them, and then they'd have babies. And a lot of people were like, oh, I'll buy a pair, and they'd buy from that person. And so they would do this passive, not really consciously paying attention, kind of inbreeding. And I feel like that was a pretty prominent in Hognose, because there weren't many people that were just breeding Hognose. Everybody that bred Hognose, they bred mostly king snakes or corn snakes, and they just had a few Hognose. And so I think it was a lot of that.
Well, there was that's it. And it carpet
one
python.
second. Oh, you're here.
Oop.
All right.
I can hear you now.
Back on. Sorry, put my AirPods back in. But yeah, we had the same problem in carpet pythons with the granite carpet. They were highly inbred for that same reason. You would make the hets, buy a pair of those, breed those together, and then it continues on like that. And then we start having issues like eyeless snakes, kink snakes, just fertility issues, or just dropping dead randomly. So they had the same problem. It seems like something you see every once in a while with certain morphs, depending on how valuable they are at the time.
Right. Yeah. So it's I think it's that, still that 90s mentality of people just didn't really think about it. Okay, I'm just going to breed these together, and that's going to go well. And that's all we need to do. There wasn't this thought, I feel like people didn't think about it too deeply about hey, we need to have different lineages and we need to continually outcross and stuff. Right. And then this dude that Brandon, yeah, if you don't really want to do lavender to lavender, I've done lavender to lavender, and I've gotten good eggs, and the babies are fine. Every time I've done lavender to lavender, babies are big and healthy, no genetic issues. But every time I breed lavender to lavender, it's very hard to get fertile eggs. 90% of the time, 85% of the time, you're going to get infertile eggs. So what I would do is, this is actually a good opportunity to buy more Hognose snakes. Get a different female for your visual male, and get a het male or something completely different for your visual female.
I don't know. I think it's important. If you have the ability to do it, try to outcross when you can. You know, some stuff it's going to be hard to do it with, and particularly with like a lot of Australian stuff. That stuff can be hard. Like right now, it was a bitch to try to find olive pythons that you knew different lineages of, as far as different lines from back when certain ones were either imported, smuggled, or from different zoos. So.
And yes, Amy, message me or on like more Instagram, and I'll get you in contact with my girlfriend. She has like one PPA available, one pink pastel.
You know, you don't really hear a lot of olive python breeders in the United States. Like, I
hear about olive python breeders. The problem is the albinos. I think the albinos were having issues. I know some people have produced some now, but I remember Jeff Newmanis got his original adults in back. I think Nick brought them in for him. And he bred them, got albinos in like 2013 and 14, and then hasn't produced them since. But I think there might be other reasons why he may have had trouble producing them. So, but other than that, you don't see a whole lot of the albinos, and I wonder if it's because of lack of outcrossing with them. Because
could be. There's that albino green tree too. What happened to that?
Just passed away recently. You're talking about Floyd.
Which one? You talking about the one that
the original albino's name was Floyd. You probably remember those pictures. There was a breeding picture of him, but he just recently passed away in like the last month. Nothing ever came out of it. There's been other albinos that have popped up in other chondro keepers collections, but
there were. I knew of the Maruki one. Was it did Dave and Tracy have that one? I'm not exactly sure who ended up with that, but there was an albino Maruki. 20 years ago or something that was bred, but that's the line that Marshall's stuff came from.
Okay.
They had albino chondros, and for whatever reason they seem to have issues. But I remember in particular with the olive pythons too. Yeah, it looks like a Maruki animal.
Is it?
Yeah, it looks like it. White stripe on the back. It looks Maruki.
Cool.
Okay.
So.
That was the original pictures, and I remember this one that they posted. And these, man, I feel like I was looking at these pictures in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, I think that's an older picture of that animal. Yeah, the original albino Maruki animal.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's weird though. You don't see a whole lot of just in general. You don't see a whole lot of albino green pythons in general. I figured there would be more of them, especially with animals, particularly with low. That aren't as big as or travel as far. I figure with animals with smaller ranges, they would be more prone to inbreeding, and I would figure you would see more mutations pop out of them. I think that's why you see a lot of ball python mutations is because of the limited. They don't travel as much. They're smaller, weaker.
You're right. Well, it's called gene flow. Yeah, and there's like certain species that have more limited. They're gonna. The other thing is too, like, there's a lot of incomplete dom traits though in ball pythons, so they definitely are more prone to throwing lots of mutations. But then there's also there's how many being collected out of the wild, so they have this insanely massive sample size.
Yeah, for sure.
I forgot, you're talking about the Okatee corn snake. That was line bred. People try to keep their Okatees as pure as possible, and after X amount of generations, albinos started popping up.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. No, what's another one? There was there'd be all kinds of like Maclots. I remember there was a hypo Maclot python. That thing ended up dying somewhere in the US. It's always one of those situations where somebody.
How the fuck does it die? How are these things dying?
People get them and then they think they should be way bigger than they need to be to breed, so they overfeed them till they die from.
Oh my god. That's like everybody, man. That's everybody. I know people do this. Hognose snakes, leopard geckos, everything. Fat tail geckos. There was one dude. He had these really nice high red orange albino fat tails. And at the time, these things were worth $800-900 each, especially the colors on them. And all he did was feed them mealworms. And he said he ended up selling them all. He couldn't get a single one to breed. And the person that bought them never got one to ever reproduce. Their tails were this thick. And they looked like obese, round pound turds. And then I'd post my dad and I would have these really healthy leopard geckos and stuff. And I'd get like some people's, and every now and then I still get comments. People are like, your leopard geckos look sick and thin. And I'm like, no, they look good. You're just like the aesthetics of an obese gecko.
Right.
Are the real big ones from Afghanistan? What are those ones?
Those are the Angramanu. Those are from little range in like southeast Turkey, and they're mostly Iran and Syria. They're the Iranian leopard geckos. Eublepharis Angramanu, they're the coolest ones as far as a leopard gecko species, in my opinion. Did
anybody start putting mutations into them to create larger mutations?
I don't think you can hybridize those.
I'm sure you can.
You think you'd be able to? Well, I didn't try very hard, but when I was breeding leopard geckos, I did try to breed some Angramanu to some pure locale line Turkmenicus and Fasciolatus, and they would just kick out slugs. And then there were some people that claimed they had hybrids, but every time somebody says they had a hybrid or seen one, there's like it looks like just like an Angramanu, and I don't think anybody's actually hybridized them. But like Williams, I would assume that you should be able to. The Angramanu do look very similar to a leopard gecko, like a Macularius, but they might not be able to be hybridized. I tried it a couple times. I was unable to, and I did hard wiki to bold stripes, and all I got was eggs that looked good, but there was no embryo in them.
Interesting. I figured you'd have had no problem with it.
Right, I would have thought the same thing. And like, no, I'm not really like for hybrids. Although if you just heard those two stories that I said out loud, it seems like I was trying to hybridize the shit out of them. Like, but it's only with leopard geckos I tinkered with it. And I'd say like, I know we talked about this Nick Mutton to a degree about it, and I know a lot of other people are like really like negative hybridization, which is crazy to me because it's like these are in captivity, they're being labeled, they don't have any negative impact on the community other than this just bias towards them. There is actually some pros to hybridization, which is you learn something about the species. Nobody would think Woma pythons and ball pythons would be able to actually be bred together. So it actually
a ball python and a green python could hybridize.
Right. So I'd say it's definitely has some scientific value to taxonomy.
I do think, though, one of the bigger issues is with all the laws and stuff coming down, particularly with the pythons. I'm not going to say too many about the other species, but when you can breed berms and rocks to ball pythons and then say legislation starts hitting harder on the big stuff, well, how are they going to distinguish if your ball python's one or the other? If you're breeding hybrids, like I know, I know he had that fire here recently, but Bob Clark had a bunch of the berm balls and stuff. So
yeah, somebody just said earlier, like his place just caught on fire. Was it like yesterday?
Yeah, last night. At like
what happened? Is his stuff okay?
I heard. I don't know if I don't think they know yet, but I think they were pulling out animals, like live animals. So I don't know how much stuff actually ended up getting killed or not.
It's not good.
I think it's gonna be a few days for anybody hears anything.
Yeah, I don't want it.
Like that happens,
Right.
We have also reps in Texas point out that there's Saprensis. Saprensis is a newly discovered leopard gecko species. I think they just discovered it like 7-8 years ago. And that one's like it's not close to Angramanu. I don't know if they really get that big though, Gabe. I think it's just one of those bullshit stories like they said with Fuscus. Some dumbass in the field said Fuscus was like the one is like 14 inches. Or something like that. He was measured in centimeters, but it equated to almost like 14 inches. Apparently, this guy didn't know how to use a tape measure or a ruler or whatever the fuck he was using.
Sounds like every guy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
we know how to use it, buddy.
Yeah, this guy's
just jam it into your stomach and then go from there, guys.
Yeah, this guy must have really jammed it in his stomach because, dude, a Fuscus isn't even big. A Fuscus is like normal size. They're like regular Macularius get bigger than a Fuscus. But they say Saprensis is supposed to get big. Saprensis does look kind of neat, but I don't think I think they're normal size. I think whoever's is the big fishtails again. Fishtails told by little dingling dudes. And then we got another one.
Really quick, those big ones, they don't really look obese. Like, it look very slender.
They do. They naturally have, like, I call them, like, the basketball players of leopard geckos because they have, like, big hands. They have, like, really large features. And, yeah, they're very lanky. They don't lay as many eggs. They take longer to reach maturity. The Angler Manu is actually, if I wanted to see any leopard gecko be produced more, it'd be like Saprensis because they're so rare, and then like Angler Manu. And the Angler Manu are really, really cool looking. And it's pretty hard to get those ones obese, it seems like. They have like kind of like a thinner profile. But I'd imagine if you ever get one that looks real chunky and filled out, and it looks like it's like almost like a Macularius, like a chunky Macularius or like a well-built one, that's probably obese for that species.
Okay. There's also, and then we could jump off this topic, but moose, you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Giant leopard gecko. I remember
There's
that.
bigger ones now. Steven, there's one guy at Pomona, man. This guy at Pomona, the last Pomona show, I looked at his table briefly. I can't remember who he was, but he had some of the biggest giant and super giant leopard geckos. He had one on his table that was like 180 grams. Big leopard geckos. And they were not only obese, they were long. So they were impressive because it was like, wow, that's a big, long leopard gecko. They were kind of all overweight. I mean, you're not getting any of these really giant leopard geckos without like cramming them with food, though.
Yeah.
No, you said that, and not breeding them, right? Just feeding, no breeding.
No, you can breed them too. Some of these guys are breeding these giant ones. I'm sure they don't make the best breeders. And somebody just asked me the ideal weight range for breeding female hognose. That's subjective, but I'd say you want to be plus 2 years old. 2.5 to 3 years is a really good range. And I go more by body structure. But that female that I just posted on my Instagram that laid that like 7-egg clutch recently before Tinley, she was 107 grams after laying. So she was around 140, 150 prior to laying. Probably more like 140. But typically, I like my first-year breeder females between 170 and 200. I really like that 165 to 190 gram window there.
What's too big?
Too big? Too big is like, here's the thing. I have 400-gram females that breed very well, but they reach that size very slowly. But yeah, if your females are like 400 grams, 300 grams, and they're like 3 years old or younger, way too big, you're going to have problems. You know, the one problem is I see some breeders run into. I'd say like there's a lot of mistakes first-year breeder hognose people make. The first one is, and this one like I learned early on, but then I started, you start seeing mistakes from other people. And because they ask you, like, hey, I'm doing this and something's gone wrong. And then you tell them what they did wrong. And then they fix it. And then you start seeing them having a good season. And then somebody else comes to you with that same question. So you start to see a pattern like, oh, this is a common one. And one of the common ones is keeping hognose too hot out of cool down. People would bring them out of cool down and they put them like right at like 90 degrees at a hot spot, 95. And yeah, it's not good. You're just speeding everything up at that point. Another one is getting females too big, too quick. You're going to have more issues with egg binding, poor fertility. Not supplementing is another one. Hognose have a very diverse diet, so you want to use like ZooMed Reptivite was really good, and Vionate. I like Reptivite because it has essential amino acids and vitamin and mineral complexes for reptiles, and that's formulated by ZooMed themselves. And it's specifically for reptiles, and they're a huge supporter of US ARC. So another great reason to go with them. And then also calcium supplementation. So I see a lot of under-supplementing, getting things too big, too quick. The other thing is, too, like when my female hognose get into small adult range, let's say 110, 140 gram range, I slow them way down on feeding. I don't want to see them thick. I want to see them kind of get some muscle and to like lean out a bit. You know, you want them to look kind of like boxy. You know, like they're not like they're round. You want them to have sides and you want them to have a back. So they're kind of more squarish shaped, and they got like, some muscle definition. They got some sides to them instead of looking like a round pound cake fat ass.
Yeah, I think ball pythons are one of the few species that you can have a little on the chubby side, and they still do well for breeding. Every other species doesn't usually go well.
Yeah, we try to tell you, and you guys know that too. And it's like I tell the people like, oh, this leopard gecko, like leopard geckos do pretty well with obesity too. You got to really kind of keep going at them to really get them to be unhealthy and for their fertility to bomb. But I tell people, I'm like, here's the thing. You want your stuff to be a little like athletic, maybe with like a little extra weight on it. You know, like a lot of times wild animals are a little like, they are surviving, and it's there's a lot of circumstances that sometimes like, yeah, they don't always look prime. Certain species do. You go out in the Nebraska, man, and herp for bull snakes. They're like the healthiest damn bull snakes. Every single one is like perfect. It looks like it came out of somebody's rack system. They all look really good. They sure do have a lot of, I guess pocket gophers and other like prairie voles to eat because these things are always thick. But, I'm like, what species can you think of that is healthy being obese and overfed. Tell me that fucking species. There isn't really any. So why should you do it with anything you own?
Right. I think we all got used to just a round snake being a round snake, so everyone just tried to get everything round, or I guess oval shape in some cases.
Right. Yeah, like blood pythons. Blood pythons, they started looking like those giant loaves of bread where they just kind of like span out.
You see like berms and retics that just look like melting snakes because they're just so goddamn heavy.
What about Jay Brewer's diaper retics? Remember we talked about that? They look like they got to take a shit.
No, that's definitely one for sure.
The bottom 1/4 of their tail looks like they're carrying around shit, but it is a combination of shit and then just those fat deposits along the side.
Yep. No, for sure.
Yeah, supplementation's a good one, especially because in captivity we don't have the most varied diet. And also, I was reading this one study on feeder rodents. A lot of feeder mice, and I'd imagine rats too, are vitamin D deficient or low on it. And, they have some mineral and vitamin deficiencies because of the lab diet. And then also a lot of times they're like, in the wild, they have a really diverse diet, and you might be getting some actual sunlight. And then in the captivity, they're just in these racks, and they're presented by a little higher bacterial level environments, and then they have a more limited diet. So I think supplementation is very good.
What do you think would be the easiest thing to add to a rat's diet to bring up your vitamin D that's not going to hurt your wallet if you got a big rat colony?
Oh, man. Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm not a specialist when it comes to rodent diets. So, I'm supplementing my prey for my feeders and then maybe giving my hognose some quail eggs or really hard-boiled egg chunks because they eat a lot of reptile eggs in the wild, and composition of a bird egg and a reptile egg is very similar. So a very great alternative or partial alternative prey item for them. But when it comes to feeding, raising your mice or rats, I give them seeds. I give them a mix of flax, millet, and then sunflower seeds, and I'm hoping that helps a little. And every now and then I give them some black soldier fly larvae, although I haven't done that in a while. So I think if you diversify their diet with maybe giving them something let's say if you breed isopods and you have an ass ton of extra isopods or crickets or mealworms, throw those in there. Give them some I get the smorgasbord, what they call it, a bag of seeds from my feed mill, and it has millet, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, corn, few other grains, and and I put that in there, and I'm sure that helps.
So how much of the diet of a hognose, percentage is mammals to reptiles? Is it strictly reptiles, or is there a percentage that is mammals, or is it certain regions?
Yeah, good one, William, because there's a bunch of different locales now in Illinois and then Minnesota locales. It seems like they're very rarely eating prairie voles. They have done some DNA, basically tests. They did one. Is Dr. Andrew Dorsey in Illinois did one where they took basically carbon readings from the stool and were able to conclude what kind of prey items they were most likely eating. And his very first study on it, the algorithm came back with a higher percentage of rodent diet, but then the second time nowhere near as much. But when it came to actual observing wild heterodon Nazca stools, they did find fur in a couple stools 2 different times, so it looked like they were eating young prairie voles, but that's rare. And then every now and then they're eating ground nesting bird eggs, because you got things like meadowlarks and killdeers that nest on the ground. There's a few other species too, and they'll eat their fledglings. But these bird eggs, fledgling birds, because there's only a short period where a fledgling bird is big enough, and it's only an adult hognose that can eat that. And then prairie vole, or even let's say a pocket mouse, pinkies or fuzzies, it's making up probably about 5% of their diet, Okay. And for the most part, they're eating more reptile eggs, and then amphibians and other reptiles. They're eating a lot of lizards. They're eating good amount of toads, tiger salamanders, a lot of turtle eggs as adults. But yeah, it depends on the range. If there's a lot of turtles in the area where that hognose locale is, the one thing is I've noticed if there's a dense population of hognose, there's a lot of turtles in that area. It's usually a healthy prairie ecosystem that's adjacent to a large river or slough. Usually a big slough runoff from a river where it's large and marshy, and there's like tons of turtles in there. And it's like, well, then there's a population of hognose there that's really dense. And it's like, well, it makes sense because they're eating a lot of turtle eggs, and it's like there's a shit ton of turtles in this area, so there's more prey availability. But yeah, they're not eating as many amphibians as most people initially thought. Like 20 years ago, people were like, hognose eat toads and frogs. And it's like some areas they found like Nassicus diet can be up towards of almost 40% toads, it seems like in certain areas. But for the most part, it's actually smaller than that. So amphibians are actually kind of like a decent small window. And then lizards, and then like turtle eggs, and just the other various prey items they're finding like make up the rest of it. So it's like all these like 5%, like 30%. And then like again, like some areas the reptile eggs were making up like a really large percent.
You ever thought about doing experiments with them as far as starting a young neonate and then raising it all the way up to reproductive size on like, I don't know, the reptile lynx, either the lizard or the frog lynx or something? Or quail eggs? I do. Well,
I have done. Well, actually, I've done one on mostly chicken eggs, and then things like lynx. I don't. The funny thing is, like, not all, like some of the stuff I don't like talk about like too much. It's not stuff I like share often because it'd be a long reason to ask you why or why I don't. But I've raised hognose solely on live and pre-killed before mice. I've raised hognose primarily on chicken eggs with a mix of frog meat and other alternative diets with limited mice. I would conclude, though, that the all-rodent diet with supplementation is pretty much on par. But once you get to adulthood, when you get to like that period where their growth starts to like, or should be slowing down, or they start to reach maturity, that's when you need to do portion control, and maybe a little more varied diet and supplementation really comes into play. Because when I was younger, everybody would swear hognose burnt out at 3 or 4 years of breeding, they're done. And then I remember Brent, he came over to my place one time about maybe like 8-10 years ago. I was at my dad's place. And he seen I had some adult female hognose laying right as he is there, and is in the fall, and he goes, those are first-year breeder females. I'm like, that's not first-year breeder female. And I was like, look at the tags. I have the deer. He goes, well, how are you guys? Like, well, I cooled them later. And he goes, there's no way. He goes, those females are 10 years old. Yeah, those females are 10, 11 years old. And I was like, he goes, how are they still breeding? And I was like, well, I just never got them really large. And, a lot of it is just keeping them healthy. It's like anything. It's just like your rare pythons. If you keep them appropriate size and they're healthy, they're going to do well. But I would say hognose, like, they don't have as long as a life expectancy as a boid. And then also they are a little more impacted by the diet we feed them, because like a lot of these pythons and boas naturally, eat a degree of, let's say, rodents, while hognose really aren't supposed to really be eating many rodents at all. And I'm giving them pretty much a staple diet of rodents in the majority of the cases. So they're a little more sensitive to it. So that's the thing I try to like, so if you overfeed a hognose rodents, they do a lot worse than something like, let's say I overfed a hognose like eggs and like lizards and toads. It's going to do a lot better than a hognose that's overfed mice, of course.
Right. Well, I was wondering because of we see the same thing with like black-headed pythons and even Womo pythons to a certain extent, where they're a higher percentage reptile diet. And then you even see it in people, like people who like bodybuilders who eat more red meat compared to lean meat, or like chicken or something. You'll see a lot variation in looks just from even in the same species. So sometimes I wonder with the animals that do eat a lot more leaner prey, like birds and reptiles, if maybe that would help or be more beneficial to them.
I think so. Yeah, because a lot of these rodents they're like fatty, so you're feeding them this like really rich fatty diet, so exactly. It's better than like foods with preservatives and stuff, but it's still not good.
Right.
Do you think it'd be possible for somebody to create a gut load almost for your rodents, like the certain amount of previous days before they're actually fed off, there's something that's put in their diet, or you just switch to this other type of food?
Yeah, I would say also, because the other thing is too, like let's say mice. It depends on the species. Like let's say like like pocket gophers. They eat mostly like roots and stuff. They don't really, as far as I'm pretty sure that they don't even eat invertebrates. You know, but that's a pocket gopher. But then like the mice we keep in captivity, you know, a lot of mice, like wild mice and stuff, they eat a lot of grains, but they'll eat a lot of like bugs. They'll eat arachnids. They eat all kinds of insects. They'll eat like, you know, a caterpillar. They'll eat whatever. So I'd say like the one thing that if you're going to gut load your mice, gut load them with like maybe a leaner diet or feed your mice a leaner diet. The one thing is when you feed them a leaner diet, they're probably going to have less babies. But then maybe more insects. You know, if you're feeding a mouse like mostly like, let's say crickets, mealworms, and like isopods, that mouse is going to be a lot healthier to feed to your snake. But, you know, it's like how much healthier? And I'd say it's like probably going to be a considerable amount. You know, it's not going to be, I don't think it's super massive, but it's going to be decent. And also, jumping back to the one thing real quick, just because somebody like, once my adult female hognose get almost to like small adult size, I cut them back to only feeding them like every 10, 14 days. I don't feed them much.
Well, Dave, that's what Ron St. Pierre was doing with the emeralds and stuff, was gut loading them with fruit instead of grain.
Yeah, that was kind of
what he was talking about.
Yeah, no, the idea of gut loading crickets, you know, even with Pangea adding crickets to their crested gecko diet, like, you know, there's always a way to improve. And I'm sure, again, there could be a formula out there that you could feed your rats prior to feed them to your different species of snakes.
Right. We might have one. I just thought of it because, like, Missouri diet's pretty good. I get that. But they have insectivore diet. Insectivore diet would probably be a good one. I'm going to mess around with this. Hold on, let's see. I bet that's going to be
Missouri insectivore.
Yeah, they might have insectivore diet and blocks. Now they have it for gut loading and they have it in a gel. I can't do that shit. But I'm not feeding my mice gel. It'd be impossible.
Just put it in a water bottle.
Yeah, right. No. And that's the other thing too. Like you can feed your rodents like fruits and vegetables. You can't do it for a long time though. They'll all get the runs. They'll eventually die. Now you can gut load them before. But if you feed your like mice just fruits and vegetables primarily, they're gonna have diarrhea so bad.
Right. Yeah, I think he was just getting them in, feeding them for a little while, then feeding.
Yeah, right. That's fine.
Yeah.
I guess how many days of fruit did it take before their system was cleared, or like how many days would you have to lead up to actually giving them a different diet, hoping to build up?
Probably wouldn't take very long because rodents have such a high metabolism to begin with. So I'm sure they burn through it relatively. I would think so, anyways.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I thought they had a rodent insectivore diet. I don't see it. Well, they have insectivore diet.
What do you, Dave? Do you think that was the issue with boas and why they were so sensitive was because they probably have a higher reptile diet? I know Vin said something about it, but I don't know how much it's actually been studied what their primary diet is in the wild, what imperator or constrictor.
You know, this is actually a conversation I haven't had a lot in the industry. You know, I do remember people adding I remember old pictures of people feeding like raw chicken legs to boa constrictors. I've thought about something like different things in there, but you know, my big thing now we talk about it is more fasting in certain times of the seasons, and once they get a little bigger, the meals are more spaced out. Like, you know, it's easy to remember the 7-day schedule, but honestly, I think the 7-day schedule for a lot of these animals is way too much. And I know a lot of people have got away from that, but no, I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest with you.
Okay, I was just curious.
I've tried feeding chickens and birds. Like, I think even we got some quail in. Some boas didn't want to go near it. Like, absolutely refused it. You know, Womo pythons, of course, they are always about it, stuff like that. But they'll eat anything. But no, some boas, good feeders, wouldn't even consider taking a bird.
That's interesting. Usually birds are like crack the most pythons. I figured boas would be similar. I knew like carpets love most birds for that matter.
Yeah, they could be instinctual, but maybe after a few generations, they just lose the taste for it.
Maybe. Yeah, I've seen it in king snakes.
Yeah.
They choose mammals over reptiles. Yeah.
That's an interesting thing, Junior. Do you think a gravid female, what she's eating and digesting, actually kind of passes on to the babies in a way where they get a taste for it?
Well, as far as keeping hognose, I'd say for some of these, no, because the damn mom's eating mice and then the babies don't want to in some cases. But, here's the one thing, like a lot of the species we work with, and I'm not an expert on the evolutionary process, and I don't know if anybody really is. I'm sure there's some people that, specialize in this. But, I'd see people say things like, 3 or 4 generations, like, you can change this in an animal. But with a lot of these reptile species like hognose snakes, they found fossils of them in Kansas that are like about 10 million years old, and they're pretty much unchanged. And, I'm sure there's been some changes, of course. This fossil can't tell you everything. But hognose, well, let's say they're mostly unchanged for the last, million years plus. Just a few generations, while you might be able to do a lot with the color and maybe body structure, it seems like a lot of the habits of them are, it's very hard to undo. And let's say, I could get, placid hognose sometimes. I can selectively line breed ones with, a calmer disposition, but I'm taking ones that innately already have that, because those are a disposition that you can find in the wild, because those are behaviors that are beneficial to their survival. The defensive ones do really good. The really placid ones that are very reclusive, they're both reclusive. They do very well. So they're two defense strategies that work, but we're looking at them as behavioral, dispositions, is like keeping them in captivity. We don't want, say, a lot of times like a spazzy snake, we want a calmer one. But let's say William's working with these white lips, or let's say blood pythons. And let's say the white lip pythons are naturally kind of always a little more high strung, they're probably going to be like that for many generations. You're not just going to get rid of that in 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. There's some people in hognose snakes, they're like, wait, what if we start selectively breeding the best feeder ones? So people haven't been doing that. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's everybody wanted the best feeder hognose. You think I was breeding my shittiest feeders for the last 20 years? Fuck no. I've only bred my best feeders. And still, guess what? I still get bad feeders. And you could look at it as are hognose easier to feed now than they were back then? I would say, heck yeah, but a lot of it comes with, I know how to better handle those situations. And I know techniques that are way better getting them to feed. And so just picking up the hognose and holding it in my hand, that's not something I was ever told to do. We only had a few limited set things or options where people would say use toad, frog, and then tuna. Any of the fish will work just about the same. Chicken bone broth or egg, and that was it. And then maybe somebody would say lizard, but then you start actually using different things let's say a lizard or a gecko, and then using the inside of the gecko to scent, or using a salamander, and finding these things that work. But I mean, I'm kind of droning on. The thing is, it's just really hard to change things, even over 5 or 10 generations, it seems like. Because these animals evolved for millions of years to have these tendencies and behaviors. This stuff takes a long time to change over.
I will say, because I work with Antaresia, and they tend to have that same issue too. Spotteds and children's, they've been in the hobby a lot longer than a lot of the other stuff like Stimsons and Pygmies. But the spotteds and children seem to have gotten better. Now, I don't know if it does have to do with because we don't have mutations, so we can just pick ones that are eating better and put less work into, they all look pretty much the same, so we'll just, pick the ones that are the easiest feeders. And there has been a study, I don't know, it's not inconclusive, it's still out for debate, but they have noticed that some water python neonates don't look at cane toads as prey items anymore. Certain species in certain areas with cane toads used to get affected by the cane toads because they would prey on the small toad, the smaller toads. But I guess now there's more other generations where they're not looking at them as prey sources. But you're right. You can get one clutch of Antaresia that do fantastic on rodents, and then the next clutch from the same pairing do horrible. So you can't get a large range and stuff too.
Well, you go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was gonna with the cane toad. Has anybody ever heard of any benefits to another Australian species because of the cane toad?
They're keelback snakes, I think, are the only ones that can actually digest them. So far, I think they're the only species. Everything else seems to have. I think maybe they don't. I don't think they benefit, but well, actually, oh shit, what was it? Well, some turtle species I hear do pretty well because a lot of the monitors have been wiped out of certain areas. So I guess, you know, in certain ways, yeah, some animals benefit, but only because of the death of others. Or, you know,
that bufo poison is so strong, so it makes sense that like very little would be like able to handle that poison naturally in Australia because nothing's evolved closely. That's like something from a continent so far away. But yeah, same William with like the hognose, like they definitely are better feeders now. The other thing is too, again, like I say, a lot of it has to do with, and I'd say it's probably the same with children's. Once you know how to approach them, that helps a big part of it too. Because the one thing is like I'm way better at getting baby hognose to feed now, but I will say like the baby hognose that were like F1s from wild individuals were a lot harder to feed. But it also depends on the locale. The northern locale hognose, which are a lot more opportunistic and might eat a little more rodents in their diet naturally as adults. The northern locale hognose, first generation babies, I've always had a pretty easy time with feeding. The northern locale hognose generally ate a little better. And then now we have mostly mutt localities. And yeah, so I think like, you know, the hognose definitely feed better now, partly and due to techniques that we have and like setups, we know how to approach them a little better. But yeah, I mean, if you as selectively line breeding the best feeders over like the last, like, you know, 10, 15 generations, it helped. But you still get some that are tough feeders, even though no matter how you do it, it just never seems to be fully gone. Like, you know, they like, so it's interesting here the children's improved. And like, you know, hognose, like my red albinos, they're like that lineage seems to be like some of my absolute best feeders. And even Tim, like, and other people work here, like they're crazy because they come out of your, like after a few feedings, they'll come at you with their mouths open. But still, like 1 in 30 of them, I'll get like, they're like my best feeders and they like, eat like fanatics. But then you'll get like 1 in 30 that's like, this one's like horrible.
Well, I think why a lot of the children and spotteds might do better as far as switching over to a mammal diet is because most of those species typically go through an ontogenetic diet shift where they go from rodent or lizards and reptile diet to a mammal diet compared to a hognose. Seems like they stay pretty well the same diet from neonate to adulthood. With maybe a little bit variation.
Yeah, they do. No, you're right, and that's the funny thing is because that's like the I quoted Dr. Andrew Dorsey's study. It was actually ontogenic dietary shift in Heterodonascus in Illinois, and it's like because a hognose is this big, it can't really eat too much. It's got like fucking few options. Right. So they're eating mostly like lizard eggs and baby lizards when they're small, and then they might eat like an occasional small amphibian. I'm sure they already know that, but. Yeah, is this thing ever coming across like a pinky mouse? Probably not. Like, it's never going to really go down a rodent burrow and find a nest. I'm sure one in like a rare chance, it's possible. Yeah, but they're mainly staging and going in areas where like prairie skinks or six-line race runners are laying eggs because that's where their food's at. And then the babies are perfect size for a baby hognose snake. So they'll eat those. And then as they get older, yeah, they'll upscale like the juvenile, like or like, you know, a small adult might eat a rodent here or there if they're able to find them. They'll eat ground nesting bird eggs, maybe even a fledgling bird. You know, they can eat, you know, tiger salamanders. They can eat, you know, toads and frogs. So they're a little more expansive. But you're saying that the Antaresia, so as babies are eating like mostly lizards, and then as adults, were they eating more rodents?
Yeah, rodents. Yeah, for the most part. There's maybe a few like. Pygmy pythons are probably the hardest to get started, but they're the smallest out of the smallest python in the world. But they'll actually stay. They'll have a little bit of a diet shift, but it's usually still a high percentage of reptile. But same thing with black-headed pythons. You know, they're reptile eaters, and they primarily stay reptile eaters for most of their life.
Gotcha.
Occasional mammals and stuff. So,
hey, Junior, when you were talking about how in the early days. More northern hognose stuff for better feeders than the southern stuff. Do you think that's because instinctually they have a shorter season and they just know they have to not fail to thrive?
Yeah, I think there's like a little more difficult environment. So I think the older ones there probably, you know, are more likely to eat rodents. But again, we're talking about the baby hognose. But kind of like, you know, a species that, you know, well, I mean, again, there's ontogenic like dietary shifts. Like even like the milk snakes around here, the eastern milk snakes. Like a lot of king snakes, a lot of milk snakes eat lizards as babies. But around where I live, there's no friggin' lizards. But what they eat little snakes. And I've actually found 2 milk snakes now that had little snakes in their stomachs, or you could see a tail sticking out of their mouth. And so the eastern milk snakes around here, they eat other snakes. But once they get big, the only thing I ever see them eating is rodents. And you'll even see them hang out with garter snakes, and they don't seem to even eat snakes anymore as adults. But I'm sure they do from occasion. I've never seen it, though, but they're always, like, raiding, like, mouse nests. And anytime I see an adult milk snake with a lump in its belly, you can tell it's a rodent, too, because it's, like, under a board where there's a mouse nest, and there's a perfect mouse-sized lump in it. So it's like, all right, you ate a mouse. So your original question was different. Where was I going, Dave? What'd you ask?
No, I think we can move on.
Oh, the northern locales and the babies.
Why you were just saying how they were
shorter windows.
They're
more opportunistic. And then the southern locales, I think there's a lot more lizard species, and so they're probably a little more dependent on lizards down there, and they're probably eating more of them. But the northern locales are too. I think the northern locales are shorter season. They're more opportunistic, so they are more inclined to eat whatever is there. Thanks.
Oh, Dave. Dave, you're lacking, man. Pick it up, man.
I'm not lagging. I'm just enjoying listening, man.
What was the dinosaur theme? Why did we do a dinosaur theme? But actually, only you did it.
Well, that I didn't even know about.
Well, no, because you can't. I knew you weren't going to do anything. I woke up with bedhead the other day, and I was like, wow, that kind of looks like a dinosaur. So I just thought maybe you'd want to dress up like a dinosaur, and then you didn't dress up like a dinosaur.
I see.
If you gave me the opportunity, I might have tried, but you didn't even let me know.
Should have asked. Should have brought it up.
You son of a bitch.
Well, this all kind of came together this morning. We were even doing this episode.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. But
well, I guess maybe next time we'll pre-plan. I'll let you know what dress up is.
Yeah. Get a little better. Come on.
Feel good about this. This knocked it out of the park. I mean, I don't think I could have done this any better.
Yeah, no, you did fantastic, Dave. I wasn't even ready for it. I wish I would have got a pregame picture beforehand. So I could
hard to be ready for a thing like that, buddy.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's true. About this, we need to get a podcast going because I thoroughly enjoyed your Eugene one you guys done, and I really enjoyed you guys' Trumbauer one. And I go, you know what? He needs to get a roundtable of everyone. If you're not 70 years old, you're not invited. Type of podcast of all these old timers, and just make it like a campfire episode. Where it's just
I was going to say, because that sounds like nonstop technical difficulties.
Yeah, well, that's why they all have grandkids and shit like that to help them with this.
Yeah, we'd have to round them up and have them in the same place. I don't think we can trust 3 to 5 computers to work together. You're
gonna have to do this in Daytona. I think they're all Daytona guys, so
that'd be a good spot.
Got to get tabs on them.
Yeah, well, you guys talk to him more than I do, so you should probably rally this up and make it an actual thing.
Yeah, just 1 or 2 times more than you have.
We need to do Norm Dam, too. Norm Dam would be good.
I keep bringing him up, man. I think you just need to go over to his house sometime and just do it with him, like, side by side.
I probably would. I know he has a computer, but I don't know how that computer is.
I think it'll be a better flow if you're over there with him. Less pressure. You guys will kind of just get your thing going. I think that'd be great. I'd love to talk to Norm.
Norm's kind of like my grandpa. He's like been retired for like 15 years, but the dude always has something to do. He's like, I don't know if he's gonna be like, I don't know if I have time for a podcast. I'm like, you're retired. He's like, yeah, I don't like. These are like the busiest fucking people I've ever met. Is like my grandpa and like Norm Dam.
Right. Yeah, well, they're the ones that live forever.
They do. They're old. They're like both like 86.
Maybe you should bring him some peanut brittle and ask him if he'd do a podcast with you.
He'd probably be like, what the fuck is this? I don't think he eats peanut brittle. I think he eats like oatmeal and like ham sandwiches.
Okay. Well, now you know. Bait him.
All right.
You guys want to wrap?
Yeah, you wrap it up. Yeah. It's up to you guys.
I think it's a wrap.
Yeah. Thought we hit pretty good topics. I enjoyed it.
I have no idea what we even talked about, man.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you pay attention.
I paid attention. It was it was all over the place.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Lake Erie leopard gecko. This guy's from Look at that. That's a pretty nice leopard gecko.
Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah,
God damn! Look at that head.
Yeah, it's got pretty bold markings. Because William, like back in the day, if like we seen this like 15 years ago, it's like that's a solid leopard gecko.
Oh yeah, Jesus.
And it's $345. I feel like it's a little harder to sell now. Back then, you could have asked $500 and sold it immediately. But the prices are some of the stuff's pretty good.
How is the leopard gecko market? I really don't hear too much about it. Either of you guys know? Well, I'm sure Junior knows.
Yeah, it's a market. It's a market. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, here's the thing. It's like if you're proactive and you have new good projects, and I think if you're the one thing is I'd say leopard geckos, there are a lot of maintenance, and even selling them is a lot of work. You got to be going to shows. If you have new good projects, you're making some cool poly combos. I think you could do pretty well, and there's some excitement there. My last 3 or 4 auctions have done really well there. When I go to Pomona, I generally do pretty good with them. I bring like hardly anything. And like the thing is though, it's like I have some history in the leopard gecko community, and then so I still have some pretty interesting projects. And so when people come out and see me with them, like sometimes I make some pretty good sales, but I don't really promote them much. The one problem is there's no new mutations. Every time there's a new mutation in leopard geckos, there's some problems. The Enigma is neurological, lemon frost, cancerous, cancerous tumors. The satin, which I was excited for, seems to have issues because it's a tuberculous leopard gecko, so it has a really slow growth rate, and then it has shedding and skin issues. So I'm like, great, another mutation that is like no good.
That's why ball python people should be more grateful that they don't have more problems with their stuff.
They could, yeah. Ball python people should be very grateful. Now that's definitely a sentence that I didn't think I'd ever say, but there we are.
Right.
It's a big leopard gecko.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like the old actual photos. I tried to find Moose, but I don't know if that's the one we looked at 15 years ago.
I think you just like him because his name's Moose, because there's far bigger leopard geckos now.
Yeah, well, what they really put that on, right? It wouldn't be his hand. Oh, anyways.
Why would I do a thing like that?
That sounds like something Dave would do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because I do that all the time.
Yeah, I was obviously.
Have you ever seen my penis, Will? Have you ever seen my penis?
Maybe once.
We're good friends, right? No, you never saw it.
Well, you never.
Is that the same picture I just showed you?
It is. It's the same exact picture. They have
You still do fat-tailed geckos?
I do. I have so few though, and actually, Crystal's like, why don't you breed more of these? These are nicer, and then like as far as behavior and everything, I'm like, yeah, actually, I like fat tails more. I was like, the one thing is,
I just never pick up. Less morphs, or
they're not as prolific.
Trickier?
Yeah, they're a little trickier. They're not as prolific, and there's a lot of cool morphs, but there hasn't been any new morphs in a long time, and they're somewhat limited. You got these morph combinations, and then you have the caramel and the ghost females don't reproduce, and there's really not many polygenics. You got tangerines, you got stripes, which actually is the natural dominant trait, and you got dark ones, you got tangerine ones. Leopard geckos are just like more variable, and they're a lot more prolific. But yeah, I mean, fat tails, I'd say they're an underrated species. There's only so much room, because like I always hear that one thing too, where everybody's like, what's the next new big species? Yeah. It's like that's a really depending on what you consider the next new big species, or like what the criteria is. To me, the criteria is very large. To me, that means like ball python, I
think what makes ball pythons fucking goddamn near perfect is their bold pattern. If you look at a lot of other pythons, they don't have that bold contrasted pattern that a ball python does. So when you add too many paint jobs or too many colors or pattern variations, you either don't get anything at all, or the color is just lackluster compared to like a ball python, which has these nice bold blacks and browns that you can have a lot more, different variations of.
Yeah,
I think that's why they rule the roost when it comes to mutations, and why I don't, at least python wise, I don't see any python the only pythons that come somewhat close are all giant pythons that obviously are unrealistic to, keep in any sort of numbers, like Burmese and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Here's a question then. Nothing's ever going to catch ball pythons, but there's been a lot of species that have really expanded, and people working with them in the hobby.
Yeah.
In the last 5-10 years, what do you think that species that has done the most gains? Do you think Hognose have been the one?
Hognose, but look what
Hognose?
look what Hognose, how long it took, and what it had to do, what had to happen for them to become the next big thing. It was many years, a lot of morphs, a lot of human working hours and hobbyist hours and years into it to develop into what it is today. I'd say earlier on it was a little, easier, let's say for corn snakes or ball pythons, because, ball pythons, it makes sense because what William says, you got these bold, nice patterns. They're easy to keep. They don't get real big. And then you have a lot of mutations. I mean, that's really the recipe for anything to be the next big thing. It needs to be readily available. It needs to be fairly easy to keep. It cannot get big. It needs to have a lot of color variety, a lot of projects, a lot of morphs. And, that's a really hard ask. And pretty much all the species that are can fill those, check marks are already been found. I'm what else are you going to find that's there's really not anything we're going to have that's we didn't really think this was going to be the next big thing, and it happens. And I could be wrong. Let's see in 5 or 10 years. The one thing I'd say is it seems to be a little up and coming, but I don't think it's ever going to be that massive as house snakes. House snakes seem to be.
We talk about house snakes a lot, but I'll actually find it for you. I'm going to send you pictures after this. I found an old Reptile magazine and from the mid or late 90s, and the headline was, "Are house snakes the next big thing?" So we've been talking about this now for 30 years.
Are they the next big thing, though?
I don't know. I'm going to find you that, though. I've got the picture on my phone.
We should do another, Reptiles magazine should do another one on that. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of things in a hobby repeat itself all the time. I'll see people come up with these ideas and these this whole new and they think it's this huge new big point of view on something. And I'll be man, somebody did this identical thing 10 fucking years ago.
Right.
It's like human psychology. A lot of stuff is repeated.
Yeah. No, but
check it out.
Oh yeah. No, Are
you able to read that, Junior?
Yes.
So you got ball pythons, and I think ball pythons are just top of the pyramid. And I think the only things that ever really change is that tier underneath, with the hognose, the boas, and shit like that. That's I guess you'd call them the next popular species, where sometimes those will interchange.
Sure.
I will say hognoses I think are right up there because I ain't trying to pick a fight, but I said the only species I think that would come close to edging some hognose stuff out would be the Antaresia if a lot of those morphs were available. But obviously, since Australia is a bunch of stiflers, that won't ever be a thing.
Yeah, you need a lot of morphs, though. Hognose, yeah, they have there's quite a few morphs now. You need a lot.
Children's, all that stuff. There's a million over there, man.
Yeah,
is there?
A lot of polygenetic traits too.
That's good.
They're the hognoses of Australia. I
do like children's pythons.
Yeah, but they, but like I said, they're never going to come here. So I guess.
Oh
that's just a wish and a dream on my part. But
at 9:35 p.m., does anybody have that clip? From earlier.
What? Oh, okay. Yeah, but
I'd be willing to forget about that one.
I forgot about it for a second. Yeah, these are pretty cool, man. I like these.
Oh, dude, yeah, they're beautiful, man. But yeah, that barely scratches the surface. I used to. There was posters. You remember the old ball python posters that have what was that spider one from Nerd? Once Upon a Spider or some shit?
The Itsy Bitsy Spider or something?
Maybe it's Itsy Bitsy. That sounds too... I don't know. I think we're both wrong. I think we're both wrong for the record.
Itsy Bitsy Spider. Did it Nero down to water spout?
Now I'm going to forget the other thing. Oh, yeah. So the Australians have posters like that of their children's pythons because there's you got one over there?
Well, it's the albino poster. The one you wanted. It's not a children's python.
You got that one, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There needs to be more definition, though. I see too many like speckled like morphs where it's like you know.
That's the issue with the Antaresia, as far as like I could definitely see them becoming more popular, but even with the morphs, like I said, they don't have that bold contrasted pattern. Like
they need that. Yeah,
they're very similar to Hognose, but then you got like if you wanted something with better pattern, you'd want to probably work with more of the Stimsons and stuff. Stimsons have a lot more of that contrasted pattern compared to like the Children's are a lot more faded as far as pattern goes.
Yeah, that's how I feel about like house snakes too. House snakes, I feel like that's why. I mean, there's gonna be the morphs, but they're too like not monochromatic, but they're like there's not enough of that bold pattern and the color. Their contrast disparity between the background pigment and the saddles, or like line breed of like capabilities too to these colors.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I won't disagree with that, but I think there's still going to be a place for them in the hobby, and I think when you start seeing more people produce them, more people will get into them.
I think what makes them more adaptable to at least what we do is because so many ball python people I think would find them attractive and say, I mean, you literally can breed them and keep them just like your ball pythons. You wouldn't be able to feed them as big of prey items, but you could still feed them virtually the same.
You know, it's funny. We've been having this what's going to be the next big thing conversation for 20 years, and nothing has changed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nothing will change. You know, like I said, the ball python thing will never change. But I think it's the tier underneath, the tier 2 or 3, where it's like I think those are always not always, but those are the ones that are more inclined.
I will say this too, William. It's always about like the color morphs popping up too, because like you asked about the African fat tail geckos. Fat tail geckos, when there was a number of morphs coming out, you know, they did really well. And if somebody had like you had a new fat tail morph, like, you know, we'd sell fat tails for like $2,500 each and $3,000 each. Some of these combos, like, you know, 15 years ago. But the problem was though, like all the morphs stopped coming out. There was nothing new coming out of Africa. And so if you look at fat tails now, like every combination's been made and has been made for the last like 5, 7, 8 years. Because even like 8 years ago overseas, I was getting some like pretty good orders for fat tails. I had some like $20,000 African fat tail gecko orders. But they're just like, you know, there's just if there's like say a couple new morphs popped up that were crazy cool, you'd see fat tails, boom, get that jump again. You know, and you see them in cresteds. Cresteds were stagnated, so morph came out, boom. Ball pythons are just always something repeatedly coming out, so there's really little stagnation.
Well, and then say with the pythons, I mean, we saw it with the super door stuff. That was more, I think, a marketing thing than just something new. Someone just marketed really well. And then they blew up, and then for a little while there, I think they were edging out a lot of BOA stuff because I would listen to a lot of people talk a lot more retic stuff than BOAs at one point in time. I think it's changed now, but I remember for a while there, it seemed like they were really picking up the mantle.
BOAs did kind of run stagnant for years, like nothing new came in, and then there was just a lot of things out of Honduras. Or like the Honduras stuff came out, T positive, Onyx, so on and so forth. You had the fire boa, the leucistic. You had the labyrinth boa with the crystal. I want to say we had at least 1 or 2 other mutations. So yeah, I think a lot of new mutations in this community gets more of a buzz going, gets more people in. But I still can't always go back. Boas stayed pretty consistent.
Yeah, I was going to say Boas are very consistent.
We always had the same amount of people coming out and the same amount of people leaving when they had that one bad year.
Right. Yeah. What you seen a lot more popularity with the Mexico stuff, or what are their names? The Sabu, not Sabugue, Stigma.
Sabugue. Well,
not Sabugue. Sigma, the small bows, Mexican bows.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because you know Warren Booth does bring a lot of interest to that kind of stuff, but it's the Honduran stuff that I think that's really getting the most attention.
Okay.
I think there's at least 4 different mutations, maybe 5 in that community they can play around with, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you never really had a whole lot, it's a lot to play with.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, I mean, there's the dwarf bow community is really coming on. A lot of these dwarf species can be kept in CB70s, and they're great in there. Or I like that that like blood python size ARS or freedom breeder rack. You know what I'm talking about?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but No, like I said, boas have had some good years, and I honestly think we have our best years ahead of us. I think every species has best years ahead.
Right. Man, I'm telling you though, man, I don't know if people just don't. It's because of the lack of the adult boas that people don't see. But Jesus Christ, Dave, when I saw all your adult boas, I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is everything a ball python person wishes their snake looked like, and some. So. I mean, they were phenomenal. I'm not trying to blow smoke up his skirt or anything, but they were truly amazing. Like enough to where I'm like, it just shocks me that boas never took, at least as long as I've been in the industry, I've never seen that stride like just shot up in popularity.
Well, yeah, the IMG boas, man, are still like I think one of the best looking snakes. Just like a nice IMG red tail. I really like the blood albinos, like they call the red dragons that Tom Burke made.
Those things
I mean some of the most beautiful colors, and I really liked the VPI. What the hell are they? Yeah, to VPI T-Paz. Those are really good. Ghosts or they're
snow glows.
Yeah, the snow glow, the T-positive snow glows. Those are really cool. And wasn't there a T-Paz IMG?
Oh yeah, there's tons of T-positive. I know all kinds of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's one of those you showed me that I really liked. Yeah, but the bows are awesome.
Yeah, no, Tony Antonucci, Chi-Town Constrictors, he was the first one to kind of come out swinging with the IMG Jungle Hypo VPI stuff, and then he got Aztec into that project pretty quick. Before that, I mean, there were a few guys, and you did see some T-positive IMG stuff floating around, but it wasn't really hitting. It took over for almost a decade once we saw what it could do.
I mean, shit, dude. I remember seeing some of those the sun-kissed dragon stuff. That shit just didn't even look real. I mean, it was fluorescent red. I mean, it was just bright. Yeah.
Sunset stuff. People started crossing Hog Island boas into hypo boas, and when you have a perfect ratio, I think 50-50 after 2 generations, you make almost a super. And you make sunsets, and sunsets are amazing. That cookies and cream animal, I think there's a little Hog Island influence in that animal, and that's why you get those really soft grays and whites mixed in there from a little bit of that Hog Island blood.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I said, the boas, when it comes to the designer side of things, still so much to do, and the variability in the litter also is a big deal. I sent you that labyrinth litter the other day I made.
Oh, yeah.
And it was all over the place. Literally every single labyrinth did not look like any other animal in that litter. So I think that helps with bows too, just the variability.
Right.
Aurora says she has some sweet leopard combos, 15-year projects. You know what? I remember the leopard boas. Were they originally produced by some European breeder?
Hans. Yeah, the same guy who did the Hurricane.
Okay, he used to come to the Daytona Expo, and I remember he had just leopard bows on it, and they were very expensive.
He was set up to the right, I think, against the wall or bleachers.
Yeah, far back to the right a little bit. If you came through the entrance, it was all the way to the back, low to the right. I remember my dad talked to him the one time about him, but yeah, he had those are pretty cool, man. There's a lot of really neat boa morphs. I think the only thing that really hurts the boas is they get a little big, and then they're sighties. If they weren't sighties and you could own them everywhere, that would make the popularity, of course, go up.
I think it would help. Availability for anything helps.
And I found my Tom Burke shirt. You found it? Yeah, from the early. Wait, no, sorry. It was Pete Calls.
You found the Pete Call shirt?
I found a Pete Call shirt. Not the Tom.
You gonna have to burn that one?
I'm probably not going to actively.
You want to burn it in the mail for me? I could send you my address.
I'm not going to actively wear it at shows. I'll hang on to it for.
Probably send it to me, man. You don't really need that thing laying around.
Yeah, Dave will wear it.
Come on, let me get that shirt. Don't make me have to call him and ask for a new one.
It's from It's from 2005. It's from 2005. It's a collectible.
Yeah, you remember that Christian fella that got exiled from the community not too long ago? He had reddish hair. There were some shenanigans at Tinley.
No, what did he do?
Yeah.
Remember there was the banner of him when you first came in the front of Tinley? There was lasers in the background, those pictures people take with their cats where they're pointing 9 different directions.
Really? Who is it? I don't remember him.
I don't really want to say what he did. It wasn't
really
good though.
Really creepy stuff.
Really creepy. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that banner I'm talking about, William?
No, I don't recall this banner.
Well, there was a big banner of them. I own it now.
Send me a picture of it. You got.
I got it at the shop. I'll pop it up tomorrow and send it to you guys. It's pretty beautiful. I'm gonna set it up in the shop. Yeah, if you send me that Pete Call T-shirt, I'll hang it up right next to it.
So you're just gonna keep all the creepos that get like exiled from the community, or they're making a collection of their stuff?
Yeah, well, we all have our own thing. Some people collect serial killer stuff.
Yeah, right. It kind of reminded me of that. Yeah, like people collecting Jeffrey Dahmer stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I have a Jeffrey Dahmer snow globe.
I don't think that
really?
is.
Yeah, it's right over there. Jeffrey Dahmer snow globe. It's just like a little snow globe. You shake it and snow flutters down.
Oh, man.
Is he? And he's in the snow globe.
I mean, he's right there. You want me to grab him?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you can see him. All his
disappointed.
His juices have leaked out though. Like I've had this thing for like 20-something years.
That sounds kind of on brand for that dude.
Look like a
head
in the fridge.
Yeah, no, look at.
Oh, that's.
And then
it's just a picture of his mugshot.
And then it used to have little snow in there, but all the water's gone, so the snow just sits in bubbles in the bottom. Yeah. Real shame.
Oh god, that's great.
Check this out. This is a super Arctic leucistic. It came out of this friggin' tiny egg. Crystal just took a video of it. I gotta assist feed this one more. Gotta make sure it does not die. This will be like the smallest hognose that I ever got to live if it lives. It was like barely a gram when it hatched.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, look at that little guy. Holy shit.
Oh, man, that looks familiar. Oh, shit.
It's got real buggy eyes. It's about like this long, and it's a gram. It's like right around a gram. I mean, the scale isn't calibrated perfectly, but it's like I hatched out 1.5 grammers, and this one's smaller than that. And usually when they're this small, they don't live, but this one looks like it's hanging on. But it has to be assist fed. It will not eat on its own. So...
Like, how long will you go trying to keep something like that alive before you just say, fuck it?
I'll go forever. A year. I've done ones a year.
Damn.
I knew a ball python guy that one time assist fed an animal all the way to breeding size for a male and continue assist feeding it through the breeding season.
That's insane. My dad did that for a corn snake. It was stupid. It never ate its whole life, dude. I swear to God. He would assist feed it fuzzies. And it's the only male he had is for an important project. And so, yeah, and dude, here's the crazy part. It looked good. It was like 3 foot long. It just never got huge. It was like about 3 foot long, and it wasn't like fat, but it wasn't skinny. It looked like a nice, healthy, lean, like pretty good built corn snake. And he got pretty good at it. And you give this thing like 2 fucking fuzzy mice at a time. It was like 3-4 years old, and it never ate. And he just kept assist feeding it.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
I don't think I could do that one. Oh, the longest I've ever assist fed a hognose was about a year, and it started eating. Then at that point, it's like a $10,000 hognose.
Got to do it.
Right.
But I've done it for $100 hognose too.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say just fine line with me. I'll give it a little while, but if it's going to be a pain in the ass, I'm just not going to deal with it.
I know one guy that if they don't eat, he feeds this stuff to he'd feed them to his snapping turtles.
I heard of a snapping turtle farm in Missouri.
It's log or something. Yeah, I know.
Is that what it is?
What, yeah, Dave? You live in Missouri. Go check it out.
Well, it was like
Southern
somebody told me about
it. Right?
It probably is.
Southern Missouri.
I think I was talking to Ike about it. He takes his son.
That's where Dave lived. Dave lives in Southern Missouri.
Yeah, I'm like practically right there.
Well, kinda. You're Central Missouri.
Yeah, I guess I'm Central Missouri.
William Central South. He's Central South.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I got nothing to say. I have no idea where I live.
Well, I don't know where he lives now. I don't know. Do you live far from the facility?
Well, I literally live like 2 minutes from the facility.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to shout it out loud. You have to say where I'm at. Jesus Christ.
Hey, Dave, what's your address?
Missouri. My address, I'll send it to you so you can send me that peach.
I think we lost everyone when we said Missouri, so it's all right.
Yeah, no one's going to find anyone in Missouri.
Yeah.
A guy like me does not stand out in a place like Missouri.
Yeah.
Dave, this is Missouri here. St. Louis is like dead center. You live south of St. Louis though, but like southwest.
Yeah, we'll say that.
You live like south central.
Yeah, south central. Yeah.
How close are you to Mark Twain National Forest?
I used to live in it.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah. If you'd have ever visited, you would have known that.
Yeah, I know. I wish I want this. I always say this year I really want to visit. I just don't want to fall. I want to do my Hognose projects. I also got to make sales, and who knows what I have to do. Anyway, William, where do you live? I forget where you live.
I live, what is it? Closer to St. Louis.
You live in a city with like 40,000 people. You could say.
Oh, okay.
No.
So do you live in Illinois? Do you live in Illinois? You live in Missouri. You live okay. I didn't know you lived in Missouri.
Yeah, no. 1,000 people. They was like 7,000. Just because you lived in a population of 200.
107, buddy. 107.
Jesus.
Beautiful. It was beautiful. It took me 10 minutes to walk to my neighbors.
Everyone knew each other,
Yep.
So that's how Ben was. I remember the first time going out to Ben's place, I got lost and I asked some lady and she knew exactly where he lived. And she was like fucking, I don't even know what it was, like 15 minutes away from him.
I think she sounded more nosy.
She might have been. I don't know. Like I said, Ben's place had a lot of stigma around it at the time. So.
Oh yeah, everybody kind of knew Ben's family history and all that. There.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of assist feeding, but I will say I've got pretty good at it with ball pythons. I've never had to do it with boas that much. Honestly, I think if you have to do that with boas, I just don't.
I fucking hate doing it to ball. How many ball pythons you do it to?
It's not as many as you think.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, shit. If I do it with a ball python, it's like, man, are you really worth keeping alive?
Yeah,
Jesus, you naturally eat rodents for in the wild. Why wouldn't you want to eat a rodent?
I don't know why ball pythons fail to thrive. There's just something in them that just shuts down. Maybe it's living in that small gray container all their life. I'm not really sure, but yeah, sometimes they just don't have it in them to live anymore.
Right. I try to keep them in clear containers. I try to.
Until they stop eating.
Yeah, then if they stop eating, then I put them in a gray one. Yeah, that's exactly how that works.
What I actually really liked when I was at Chad's house, he had a baby rack set up with 6-quart containers, and he had half the containers spray painted black and the other half clear. And he switches things up while he's trying to figure out what settings they need to feed in. So he'll start clear just because if they don't feed in clear, he'll flip the container the other way in the rack, create it into the dark side, see if they feed in that, and then he has a couple other changes he makes. But I thought spray painting half the tub was actually pretty clever.
Yeah, that's interesting. Never heard of that.
Did that work pretty well for him?
He said it's a system he's used for years, and it's been very effective.
Yeah.
No, it's just unique. I was wondering why the fuck he had this like spray paint on there for like 5 minutes, and then he randomly just brought it up in conversation.
You weren't going to ask, you just got staring at it?
I thought about asking. I was kind of staring at it, like, I don't know why the fuck he would do it that way. Like, it's just, I couldn't comprehend why his rack looked that way. I almost thought it was out of laziness. Like, he only spray painted half of the tub that he had to.
You ran out and he's like, yeah, looks good enough.
Well, it's like the people who put holes in some of their air holes in tubs and stuff. You could tell when they said, fuck it, I'm done with this. They get less and less or spaced out or something like that because you try to make it organized, and then after a while you're just like, oh, fuck it, I need to get this done.
I remember early on, I went out and bought like a bunch of 6-quart containers, like a buck a piece, like the Steerlites, and I probably bought like 100 of them because I was like building like a boa rack. And what's that drill bit that like has like many different sizes in it? As you push in, it makes a bigger hole. Is it a step drill bit, or you know what I'm talking about? It's very common.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's got like
a cone.
Yeah, it looks like a cone. Yeah, it's got like a channel or like a bore on it.
Like you're gonna drill rock, but so what I did is I drilled a reasonably good sized hole in every one of these tubs, and then when I put my first baby boas in there, they all stuck their fucking nose in there and held it there, and it got almost to like their eye. and they all had like a little like scar on their face because they stuck it through that oversized hole I put on the tub.
Oh shit!
Yeah, Hognose will do that with air holes too. I get ones that wear down the edge of their rostral scale because they'll go like this with their nose.
Yeah, I stay away from that now. I went to the solderer. You just poke the holes that way. I like the smell of burning it on plastic.
Oh yeah, that sounds wonderful.
It smells good.
Takes me back.
Right. Oh god.
What were we gonna say, Will?
No, nothing. I don't even know what I was gonna say. Lost it. I apologize.
Well, you think that 30 minutes was our 30-minute wrap-up?
Yeah, right.
That's a wrap.
Are we sizzling? We peaked, right? We peaked.
Yeah. I don't know if we peaked. I'm sure we can keep this going, but we're going to have to do this again, so you know how this is.
Right.
Somebody asked me about substrate. Yeah, I have a YouTube video about it, but coarse aspen sandy chips and bioactive substrates or anything that replicates the loam, which is their substrate in their natural environment, is good. All right. Yeah, thanks, guys, for hanging out and talking. William, it's always a real fun talking to you, man. Thanks for joining. It's a good time. Riff really good with Dave. Dave, thanks for being here and dressing up. Appreciate you, boss. When am I going to see you guys next, William? I don't think I'm going to see you till like the Southeast Expo, probably. Actually, because I seen your table, and because I seen you walking around, and each time I was walking around, you're gone. Yeah. But I liked your. I see the white lips were nice, and I forget what else you had, but the one thing I paid attention is the white lips. So I'll see you there in August, Southeast Expo. And Dave, I don't know when I'm going to see you next, but we might go. I want to go herping in like May.
Well, Eric's talking about driving out. I think he's driving up from Florida, but I think we're talking about like the 10th or 11th of May. But it's Mother's Day weekend. Yeah, if you want to fly in, I'd say just meet us in Springfield. We're talking about doing the Kansas run, like stay west. Missouri, and then we're gonna go to that road cruising spot in Kansas I've been telling you about.
Okay.
Yeah, if you guys flew in for that, man, I mean, we could all go together. You should come out.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Great talk.
Yes.
No.
Do you have like and subscribe?
Yeah, like and subscribe, and then follow us on Instagram. We got William. William, you're TJW, right?
Yep. TJW Exotics. Yep.
TJW Exotics. If you like pythons, if you like snakes in general, definitely give William Philippek a follow. Great guy, cool snakes, pretty cool little, different, like interesting, like niche projects that he's doing. Follow Dave. Dave's Custom Scales. You can see William Philippek. He goes to Tinley. He's going to be at the Southeast Expo. Dave's probably going to be at the Southeast Expo again. Dave's Northern Blue Tongue Skinks, boas, ball pythons, and that's you have garter snakes too.
No, nothing like that. I have corn snakes.
You have corn snakes? Well, you do some garter. You and Bree have garter snakes.
She used to in North Carolina. We didn't continue with that.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Oh, either you guys going to the Colorado show, Plant Expo one?
I might try the Kansas City one coming up. I got to talk to Troy. Colorado, I'd love to, but what's the date on that?
End of April. Last weekend of April, I think.
Might be tough.
All right. I was just curious. I didn't know if any of you guys were going.
I would if you could sell Hognose, but Colorado's weird on Hognose for now. Unless things change in the future. But yeah, as of now, I'll just be not going there. Or else I would.
I'd love to. Love Colorado. But no, I probably won't do anything until like midsummer. I'll talk to you. I got to get the boas bigger. They're all born now. I need to get like 6 or 7 meals in them so I can start maybe doing a couple shows.
Okay. Well.
All right. See you guys. See you in 2 weeks. Dave and I will be back. We'll have William on again at some point. Thanks again, William. See you later. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and hanging out and talking and watching, listening. And thanks, Dave, again, for helping me do these podcasts and making things fun. And giving some good insight, too, along the way. So I cut you off all the time, Dave.
It doesn't matter. We're not really good friends.
This is all fake. This is all just for the videos.
Yeah. Peace out, guys.
All right. Bye. See you.